Call this meeting to order. Let's see, what do we got? Just a roll call by Monica, please.
Are we doing a roll call or introduction?
Oh, it says roll call, so would you rather do introductions? I'll just start. Hi, I'm Sarah McDougall, City Council President, and let's just go to the left, the circle.
Robin Smith, Budget Committee.
Cheryl Pellerin, City Council.
Amy Paul, Budget Committee member.
Brian Matolis, Budget Committee member.
Michael Prieden, City Council.
Distracted me. Doug Mahoney, Budget Committee member.
Jordan Wheeler, City Manager. Joe O'Neill, Finance Director.
Jennifer Lutz, Mayor.
Okay, we need to elect a chair for today, so I'd like to call for nominations.
Wants to run the really big show.
I nominate Sarah McDougall.
Should it? Does it have to be? I nominate Sarah McDougall.
There you go. I second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh boy, thanks guys. Okay. Oh, it's already on my resume.
Okay.
I went home last year and updated. Kidding. Okay, I think this is going to be a great day. Going to run smoothly. Thanks, Joe, for running the team and for doing the budget training early. Hopefully, that got a lot of people grounded. And yeah, excited to rock and roll. All right, Jordan?
Yeah, do we want to do public comment first?
Oh.
If there's any, see if anybody's online.
Do we have, that's after your budget
is it?
message.
Okay.
Following the motion.
No, I have my own.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
I would ask. Okay, well, hey, good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Here we are once a year. We get to sit down and look at a lot of numbers for our little city of sisters and our proposed budget. So in your budget book, you have the city manager's budget message. My goal is someday to make it even shorter, but you can probably tell that I have a certain format. If you've been on the budget committee for a few years, I try to stick to the highlights, city council goals, and give you the high-level numbers. And so my presentation this morning will give you that overview of what the budget looks like. I will do something a little bit different as I get through the presentation. There's a portion where I'll do a kind of a snapshot, like a forecast, show you the general fund forecast. As a tool that we use as staff to kind of project out what our budget will look like in the next 4 to 5 years. And this is a helpful kind of management tool that we use to kind of try to start make decisions today, to know like how decisions we make today will affect the future. And so it would be a fun little opportunity to show you that as a way to kind of think about strategically how our budget today may affect the future and some of the decisions that we're making. So you're always welcome to ask questions throughout this presentation too. If you've been on the budget committee, I don't mind that. But Joe will get into more of the details, and then we'll get into the department presentations as well. So opportunity for more detail. I'll stick to the high level at first though. So 43.8 million is your total city budget. For a town of 4,000 people, not bad, but a couple things just to highlight on the big numbers. You'll notice there's an $8 million loan proceeds. This is water projects starting to be coming online with some borrowing to do some capital projects in the proposed year and then the following year. So we have that reservoir project, we have the Edgington pipeline project that are coming up. So we're starting to build those funds, obviously in our fund balances that we've been building up. $25 million in beginning fund balances is a lot, right? So half our budget is just cash that we're carrying over for major capital projects and for unforeseen circumstances and our contingencies. But we're also starting to spend that. So $8 million in loan proceeds coming in water fund is a big driver of that number, and then a $10 million in capital improvements as well, which is another sizable number for a city of our size, spending on capital. This is my favorite page in the budget. It is on page, you don't have to flip to it now, I'm just 39, is that what it, fund summary? Yeah, so it's actually a fold out this time. Thank you, Julie. So you don't have to do any flipping, but it's this nice little fold out. It's probably the page I look at the most in our budget book because it gives you everything, right? It's every fund, and you have the resources on the top half, right? So all our revenues by fund totaled up at the bottom. You add in our beginning fund balances, and that's how you get the total resources. And then in the second half, we have requirements, which is our expenditures, so personnel, materials and services.
What
Sign-
page was that, please?
This is page 36. 36. So behind the tab fund summary, it will be the third page behind that tab.
Doug and I
Well,
are
there's
hard of
actually
hearing
no
over
number
here.
on it.
Yeah, we heard 39, but we didn't hear 36.
It's an upside down 9. So just to finish this thought, so requirements include expenditures. So that's our personnel services, salary and benefits, materials, capital. We total up the expenditures, and then we have under requirements also all those reserves, contingencies, and at the bottom line, that number should match the other total. So total resources should match total requirements all the way across the bottom, and there you have a nice balanced budget. So this is the snapshot of every fund, every major category of either revenue and expenditures. Another thing we look at is our operating budget. So we strip out the reserves, the fund balances, and then capital. And this is basically, when I say an operating budget, this is what it takes to run the city day to day, right? This is your salary and benefits, the major contracts, debt service. We consider an operating expense because we're committed to paying it every year for 20 to 30 years, sometimes less, but something that we just have to assume every year we need to allocate resources for. So 9.4 million, not bad. This is all funds, remember, so this is not just the general fund, but all our utility funds as well. And then on capital, I mentioned the $10 million, with the big ones being under water. We have the Edgington Road, and then design for the reservoir in there. Sewer fund continues to spend. And then a couple things to kind of highlight here. There's some blanks, right? So we spent down our parking district fund as part of the Adams Avenue Streetscape project. So we're not proposing to spend any money out of the parking district fund. And then the street fund and parks funds, we're building up those fund balances. So nothing proposed to be spent out of either the street or park SDCs in this budget year. But we'll look at those numbers because we do have some projects in the queue, Barclay Phase 2, and then a potential improvements to, or the building out of Northwest Park. So we're saving up those funds, and part of this budget is kind of estimating, how much are we going to bring in SDCs this year to build up those funds, which both projects, for the park project, we hope to have supplemented by state grants, and then the SDCs for the street fund will probably fund the entirety of the Barclay Phase 2, which is a $3 million project. So we're still probably a year or two away from that kicking off. I love seeing these numbers. I love looking at these numbers because I've said it before. You've heard me say this before. Sisters is in great shape when it comes to our reserve balances, especially in the general fund. That will be part of the conversation when I get to the forecast for the general fund. But across the board, we're maintaining really healthy reserves. A part of the reason why, as I mentioned, is before we're building up those fund balances, especially in the SDC and utility funds for all the major projects that we have programmed. Another factor is that interest rates have been really favorable, right? So when we're sitting on these high, 20 to $25 million amounts in our LGIP account with the state, we're still getting 4% interest on that. And I'll show you a slide a little bit later on that interest revenue. But that has helped kind of build these fund balances as well. It's not just the revenue that's coming in on the SDCs and utility funds, but also the interest that we're earning on those fund balances. So a couple, you'll notice a couple things here. The water SDC fund, right? We got that financing coming in that we're projecting to help fund those future projects. So that's reflected here, why that big jump. And then I mentioned the parking district fund, right? We spent that on the Adams Avenue project. We're building up those SDC funds and the street fund and parks fund for those future projects. And I think in the sewer fund, we've already started to spend down. Like in the SDC fund, we had the West Side Pump Station, right? So you see those utility projects do take a large chunk of the fund balances when we are able to cash fund something like a pump station that costs over $2 million. And so this looks different than last year, right? General fund is our largest operating fund. It's been hovering around $10 million for a few years now. But the water SDC fund now has surpassed that. And again, that's because of the borrowing that we're planning for the reservoir project. All right, switching over to the general fund. So this is, we focus a lot on the general fund because it's our chief operating fund, right? It's our discretionary fund. This is where all the property taxes come in, the transient lodging tax, so the hotel motel taxes, state shared revenues. This is where we spend money out for police, for economic development, administration, planning. So there's a lot of focus on this, right? Especially in Oregon, where our bread and butter is property taxes that are constrained. So we're constantly kind of watching how the health of our general fund is. So 10.5 million total for the general fund, and again, something to highlight is we're coming in with $6.2 million in the beginning fund balance for the general fund. So nice and healthy, way over our policy minimums for contingency and ending reserves. We have a revenue stabilization fund that we've been able to build up. And then if you look this way, right, our reserves we're projecting the ending fund balance to be 5.2. And one of the major cause of that is in the fund balances happens to be our affordable housing reserve. So we're carrying again forward the expenditure for the ARPA funds for the Northwest Housing Alternatives Project of $500,000, and then a grant to Habitat for Humanity as well. So when we expense that, that means our reserve accounts will drop to reflect the spending down of those reserve accounts.
Jordan?
Yeah.
For property taxes, last year we estimated 6.5% revenue, and this year we're only doing 3.5%. If that continues to trend down, how do we counter that or offset it, or do we have any concerns about that?
That's perfect for a conversation about the forecast, but yeah.
Okay, then hold that till forecast.
Yeah, and I'll show some graphs about growth and stuff too, and
okay.
It kind of helps explain. I mean, we're still seeing development. We're still seeing growth. It's over the 3% minimum. We're seeing, Woodlands Phase 3 being built, Sunset Meadows still being built. So, we're still seeing more than, a lot of cities see with like closer to that 3%. But it's definitely has slowed down since, 5 years ago or so when things were really booming. Another way to look at the budget, by department, our biggest expenditure is police, with that police contract with the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, community development, and then City Council and the Administration Office are major expenditures out of the general fund. Parks, maintenance is basically facility maintenance, and then parks is the maintaining all our parks. Tourism, I think everyone's aware that we shift about $400,000 a year to Explore Sisters as part of our TLT and the restricted portion of the hotel motel tax. And then here's a look at those reserves in our general fund, the operating contingency. So when I talk about policy minimums in our financial policies, best practice is, I believe it's like 17% of an operating budget to hold in contingency by the JFOA, but ours is 25%. So we hold 3 months of operating costs. So if something happened, we had a major flood, everyone stopped paying taxes, then, how long can we operate, right, with just using what kind of cash we have on balance? Similar to what you might have, in your own bank accounts, a savings account, right? So best practices is that you have an operating contingency of at least a couple months. We have 3 months. Same goes for a reserve for future expenditures. This line really is anything that's left over from the prior year through underspending, or we got more property taxes than we anticipated, or maybe we had a great tourism season and more TLT comes in more than what we budgeted. That kind of just drops in, right, as, extra on our reserves. But this is over that 25% as well. So if you combine those two, we're at 50% of our operations, which I would struggle to find another city that could compare to that right now.
Could you give an example of something that might, an expense that might come up besides operating contingencies that we would use the reserve for future expenditures for?
I think it would be discretionary, right? So this is not, this account is not, pegged for any kind of future item that we currently have in mind, right? But if the council says, we want to spend on a new city hall, that's a bad example, or we have a road project that we really want to complete and we don't have enough in streets or something, and we're willing to, change our policy minimum or spend the surplus that we have in that account on that project, you would have the discretion to do that. The operating contingency is there actually for the proposed budget year. If anything happened that was unexpected, that we didn't budget for. So say in the middle of the year, the council says, oh, we just had this, wildfire emergency, we want to transfer $100,000 into a line account to, pay for grants to restore some, infrastructure. You could draw that out of contingency.
Yeah, I was actually looking at the reserve, the kind of leftover.
Yeah.
I wasn't proposing, but we would spend anything out of contingency. Thank you.
Can I add an example? I would say something like the Barclay improvements. If we decided, hey, let's move it up a year and pay for it now and put the money we were going to put into it next year or the year after and just move it up the schedule just because we thought it was a public safety concern or something like that. That might be a good example.
Yeah, and the other reason to have a reserve for future expenditures, some cities just keep a unappropriated ending fund balance, which basically you can't spend. It's basically locked up unless there's a major catastrophe, but it's a cash flow purpose, right? This gives us, extra, cash in the bank to pay salaries and things like in contracts because we only get property taxes. Most of it comes in once a year, right? But, we also have the rainy day fund, which is very similar to that reserve for future expenditures. Looking around, City of Bend also has something that is very similar called a revenue stabilization fund. So Joe and I were talking, that's a pretty good name for it. Because if you think about the economy in Central Oregon and how hard we were hit with the recession, it's not a bad idea to have this kind of third category of, a discretionary reserve to spend when you get in those situations. If we had, a terrible summer with smoke or wildfires, or, we have a recession and people aren't traveling and spending money and things like that, or we're not seeing growth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what we've been able to do, thanks to Joe and the council budget committee, is, last 5 years, once the kind of COVID boom happened and the Zoom towns happened, TLT, you've seen those charts, I'll show you it again, really spiked or jumped up. It's flattened off now, but also all that growth that happened with the property taxes. Instead of just spending that and saying, oh, hey, let's spend everything that's coming in, we say, oh, well, during good times, you store that away, right? Because, chances are the economy is going to change, things are going to slow down. It's just the nature of things. We're not going to continue with this, pace that we were on. So we were able to appropriately, save up when we had the opportunity to do so.
And putting this together for this year, how much in the back of your mind was the federal situation with, the opportunity for grants being greatly diminished, at least in the near term? Did it play a lot into this, or was it just, kind of, it's nice we have a stabilization fund just in case?
Yeah, not so much. I mean, we did go through one appropriation request for like the Barkley project. I mean, most of the, funding requests will be more for utility projects, and things that like water and things that they like to fund as opposed to like general fund, expenditures.
Can I ask, are these reserve funds all available immediately, or is there like a time like between when someone would request it and when it's available?
It's a good question. I think the contingency is for sure, available, right? It just takes a budget resolution to transfer it into an expenditure line.
Reserve as well.
We do appropriate the reserves, so they are.
Yeah, the others I think would need a resolution as well to move them. So it just depends on how much. You can do kind of a budget resolution adjustment, or you have to do like a bigger adjustment to like a hearing when it's more impactful. But you can conceivably move any of those to an expense line.
Is my memory correct that the housing reserve was higher a few years ago and that we used some of that money to fund some of our affordable housing projects?
So that housing reserve was put in place, from my recollection, I think it's always been 20,000, but the affordable housing reserve, the 92 year you're talking about,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, it has. So now that you have, the Habitat project, that has increased that significantly, and the ARPA NHA project.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, Amy, were you asking if that money is cash as opposed to tied up somewhere, or did you get your question answered?
Well, I'm assuming both of those things are wrapped up in your answer in that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there could be is it available from the account immediately, and then what's the procedural process to make it available, right?
Yeah, so it can be, and yes, it is cash. That's basically the same as,
Thanks.
Okay, let's look at some trends. Like I said, if you sat through one of these before, probably look kind of similar. I just kind of update these charts for you. Some years add a few additional tidbits. This is a chart that I like to update every year. It's really interesting to me because it's a perfect kind of encapsulation of the demographics of Sisters over the last decade or so. So the orange line is our city population. Again, this line, if you go even back further, sewer systems installed, Sisters starts growing, Central Oregon gets discovered, come out of the recession, we start to boom. Now we're closing in on 4,000 people. The blue line is the school district enrollment, which is always just really interesting to me of that really how it's been, straight line across. I think around that time where this chart starts, the alternative school in Redmond started up. But, you probably would see a similar chart in a lot of communities in Oregon. It's a reflection of, just smaller household sizes and the aging population in the country, but also Oregon in particular, and then even more particular in Sisters in Central Oregon. So population is growing, school district population is not. It's really just interesting to me. So you'll notice can't really see on mine, let me move this. Little bit kind of a leveling off here. I think in the budget message I mentioned, our growth has actually slowed the last couple years. If you just look around town, the kind of developments that are happening, single family homes, household size of just 2 people in most of those homes. Last I checked, it's been a few months, but I don't think there was any families yet in the Woodlands, for example. So, when we get our population projections from PSU, we are coming down in household size to closer to 2 per household. So even with the building, not as many folks moving into those homes. We also have a 20% vacancy rate, almost 21% I think now. What does that mean? Second homes, not permanent residents. So how that population gets counted, there's a little discount for that. So just things for us to keep in mind is like, well, property tax growth gives us this value, right? But also some of our shared revenues and gas tax revenues and things like that come from per capita as well. So even with all this development, we may not be getting our full share of revenue that comes in per capita. And the same with the school district population too. It's on a per pupil basis from the state school fund. So here's that property tax trend. We're up over 1.8 million now. So continued healthy growth. It's a nice little trend line here. Typically, as you guys know, we budget conservatively both on expenditures and revenues because budget law, we need to underspend. But also better to receive more than receive less as you close out the books and audit your fiscal year. So typically we receive a little bit more than what we budget in property taxes. I love sharing this. You've seen this before. There will be a new line next year. It looks like the Sisters Camp Sherman Fire District local option levy passed, so there will be an amount right here for the local option. Or at the bottom, I don't know where they put it, but so a few $100s more for the fire district. So I show this too just to remind folks that the city only receives less than 20% of property taxes of a total tax bill. Our permanent rate is 2.6147, and that combined with the urban renewal is less than $700 to city services on your tax bill. This is a line that, I think we've kind of maxed out. There's year-to-year variation depending on tourism activity. Did we have a good winter? Did we have a nice mild summer? That can affect this. But, since that massive growth, new hotels coming online, and folks, wanting to travel to places like Sisters and stay the night, we've really leveled off in lodging taxes at this point. So probably without seeing more hotels or lodging establishments, probably not going to see a lot of growth in this area. I think occupancies are probably holding steady at where they've been for the last few years. So like I said, a lot of variation. I mean, again, it's a volatile revenue source for us because if we have a very smoky, hot summer, this could be impacted. And so another reason why that revenue stabilization fund is important for us, because this is one of our major general fund sources of revenue. And then franchise fees, I showed this because this is also a discretionary revenue source. A lot of cities allocate their franchise fees into their general fund, especially cities that do not have an alternative source for street funding. Sisters has long put all franchise fees, which is closing in about $800,000 now, into our street fund. So this funds, your slurry seals, your chip seals, the general street maintenance. So nice that we can do this. When I talk about the forecast, I'll show you a scenario where maybe we don't do this and help the general fund get a little more revenue. But this number is directly tied to utilities, right? Utility accounts, utility rates. So as we grow, this number goes up, right? Because there's more people have garbage service, more people have water service, more people that have electrical service. Most of our franchise fees are set at 7% of the utility bill. So the gas tax increase went down in flames. We'll see if they take another run at it. But these are the numbers that across the state everybody's looking at. And this is local, right? So this is what we receive from the state gas tax and motor vehicle fees on a per capita basis, and then our city gas tax. So if you look at this at a statewide basis, it gives you maybe a more appreciation of what's happening with transportation funding in the state. We really looking like we're leveling off with state gas taxes because fuel efficiency standards, electric vehicles, less people just filling up, gas goes up, right? Like what's happening right now, less people are driving probably, so you get that effect. Since I started doing this chart back here, the trends have started to look different. I'm calling this kind of the Costco effect, maybe. More people just driving 20 minutes down the road to fill up when they're doing their grocery shopping there. But also, I think a lot of folks and sisters are driving more fuel-efficient vehicles as well, electric vehicles. And so, this is going to continue to put pressure on our street fund. Our ability to maintain our pavement condition index and do projects is going to be affected by just less revenue coming into that fund. And costs are going to go up. Construction costs, asphalt costs, all those things are continue to go up. Payroll costs, and we're just going to have less money to do that work. So that kind of gives you, a very micro look, but more of an explanation of why the state is focused on transportation funding as well. We're very fortunate to have that city gas tax, by the way, because it may not be much, but having $150,000 to $200,000 per year just to do, pavement maintenance on a city with, how many lane miles do we have, Paul?
We're running about 30.
Yeah, so we can keep a PCI of about 80 to 85, which I'm not sure there's any other city that has, especially in Central Oregon with the freeze-thaw cycle, that are able to keep up with that. So that's our goal, is to continue to keep it that pavement in a good condition or better, so it doesn't cost more to rebuild those roads.
Hey, Jordan, since you brought it up, can you explain the PCI and what the grade is for roads so everybody understands what that is?
Yeah, so PCI, Pavement Condition Index, right? Some bigger cities have to contract out for this. We have our own kind of methodology to do it, but basically every street is graded on a 0 to 100 basis, 0 being basically dirt, don't drive on it, to 199 being fresh pavement, right? Just got done. And the sweet spot is to be in that 80 range, knowing that you're never going to have just new roads all the time, but you want streets that you can, crack seal, you can do slurry seals on, chip seals on, to continue to keep the condition of it from deteriorating to a point that you're going to have to rebuild it and do a bigger overlay project or something like that. Because that's the cheapest treatments that you can do is the chip seals, slurry seals, crack sealing, and that's where we've been able to do a pretty good job of maintaining our network. Because one, it's small. Two, we have franchise fees and gas tax coming into our street fund to do it.
Thank you.
Yep. Interest revenue. So this chart looks similar last year. We were anticipating, the way the economy was going, was that interest rates were going to continue to drop. And our interest revenue, combined with the fact that we were, spending down our fund balances, that we weren't going to have as much interest revenue. We basically extended that out now a year. We're projecting that we're going to, again, get over $1 million across all funds in interest revenue, which is great for us, right? That's, kind of icing on the cake, or extra icing on the cake. But again, we're being conservative. We're looking at trends that, interest rates will continue to kind of peter down. That was a couple months ago. Ask us now. Who knows? They're still hovering around 4% in our LGIP account, I think. So, who knows what next month will bring. But it's a reminder that interest probably shouldn't be seen as a ongoing general fund resource especially, but for any of these utility accounts, something that you can count on being stable, right? Because there's the factors as what's, again, how much is in our accounts for these fund balances and future projects, and then the volatility of interest rates as well, right? So it's not like property taxes where you can basically guarantee you'll get 3% every year. For interest, it's, we think it's 4%. We're going to anticipate it's probably going to continue to notch down a little bit. Let's be a little more conservative. This is another chart that I monitor because this is, one of those, departments where we have revenue sources to cover some of those expenses, right? So in planning, anytime somebody wants to build something, a subdivision, a new home, they pay a fee, right? There's land use application fees. There's a lot of time spent in doing reviews. I brought this up before. We are continuing to work on this. And this year we hope to get him in front of council. We're going to update our fees. One of the areas that we don't charge that we probably should now, especially that we've gotten bigger, is pre-app fees, especially for big commercial developments and master plans of subdivisions and things like that. There's a lot of staff work that goes into these meetings to prep for them, give feedback, and we don't charge. It's a nice service. If you got an idea, you want to come talk to a planner and engineers and others in a room about your project and what you should look out for and how to apply for it. But we don't charge for that. We don't recover any of those costs. And so what happens is the more we do that, the more interest we get, the more general fund subsidy is happening for our planning functions. Some of this too is that we've added code enforcement, which is primarily subsidized as a general fund support, right? There's not a lot of revenue to make. We're very much let's get you into compliance before we fine you type of operation. And then, the advanced planning fee is what comes in after the land use is approved and then building permits are obtained, right? So that's based on the valuation of the project. So, depending on how growth goes, if we expand our urban growth boundary, that you'll probably see that number jump up a lot, right? The planning fees and advanced planning fees will increase as development occurs. But we're kind of in this holding pattern of still having a lot of interest, a lot of pre-apps, a lot of small projects, but not a lot of people kind of pulling the trigger and going for it right now. And I think we've been in this kind of 2 to 3 year economy where people are kind of waiting and seeing before they invest a lot.
Jordan, do you think that the fact that we don't charge for that pre-app process, which is very time consuming, as you've indicated, leads people to kind of come in and just test the waters and then not proceed? Whereas if there were a fee of some sort of a thing, those folks might decide to defer that discussion until they're more solid about whether they're not going to do something. In other words, there's no penalty to the developer to come in and utilize time to just kind of bounce ideas around, and that's good. But at the same point in time, it does create a strain on staff and time if they don't really have an intention of moving forward. They might even just be exploring what it would cost to do it here versus somewhere else. So if there were a fee involved, would that maybe make people who are a little more serious show up to the table as opposed to those that are fishing?
Yeah, there's a couple things. It's beneficial for us to do pre-ops. We want them to come in. It helps with the process. It helps us, kind of cut off like any issues later on, right? So we don't want to overcharge and shy people away, and then we just end up getting a bunch of applications that aren't complete or kind of a mess. At the same time, we want people to do their homework before they show up too, right? So we do get like you just said, like people coming in and maybe not fully serious about it. So they should have, in a sense, they should have some skin in the game, right? Do some homework. You're going to pay for this. Like you're going to get something out of it. So, be at least serious. And we're still happy to take phone calls and have meetings, but when you're talking about a pre-app, it's a situation where you're scheduling it, you're sitting down, you have notes, you're writing up, they're all, they submit something for us to kind of reflect on. So, but it's not just the pre-app fees. We're low across the board, which is very business friendly and investment friendly, but development, I'm sure council will agree, development should be paying for itself and paying for the staff time for reviewing applications, all the public involvement that's involved with applications and stuff now. Like, I think part of this work is comparing to our, peer cities and cities in Central Oregon, and I think we're going to be low across the board in all our fees. All right, expenditure trends. Look at this recent shot of Sisters. I love it. Just last week.
Well, it's nice how you can now go in with Photoshop and sepia tone everything.
This is a black and white photo from 2002 before the sewer project was finished. No. That PCI does not look good, though. I'll tell you that. Inflation. I just love to plug in these numbers every month, but we watch these, feeds into kind of our forecast. It feeds into what we can anticipate for contract expenditure increases, construction costs. It's just interesting to watch because it's, again, similar to interest. On the revenue side, inflation has been really tough to sort of predict over the last few years. You had, sort of tariff issues that kind of brought it up. Fed really worked to try to get them back down, and then, this is really gas in the last month or so that has drove up the numbers for the last month. Construction costs, this chart only goes back to 2017, but this is the Portland cost index. Show you this just to show, never goes down. Never goes down. It's labor costs, but it's also materials. Bidding environment does help. We've had some great bids in the last couple of years, and I think that's a credit to Paul and timing when we go out for bid to get more competition from local contractors. But just something to keep in mind that a reservoir project, 10 years ago, was a lot less than what it's going to cost next year.
Before you move off that, sorry.
Yeah.
The number on the left, is that price per square foot? Is that how they break it down?
Good question. I have no idea. I'm sure it's an index number, so similar to like the CPI. It's probably based on a bunch of different.
It looks like it's price per square foot.
It could be.
When you find out, add it to the graph, please.
Okay.
I think it's what it is.
Okay, our biggest ongoing expense is salary and benefits. As a service organization, we have the large contract with Deschutes County, and I'll show you that in a second. But for all our staff in City Hall and at Public Works, it's all personnel, salaries and benefits. Here are the major drivers this year. COLAs, which we base on a little bit of this, and then what the Social Security Administration annual cost of living adjustment is. So 2.8. Looking around at other cities, that's about average. Most cities were about 2.8 to 3 for this year in Oregon. We also have the merit increases. We do performance evaluations every summer, and 3% is at, how many steps do we have? 15? So 3% between each step. Health insurance premiums, we had a few years where it was a little bit better than this, but this is kind of the long-term trend. Is every year you're looking at about 10 to 15% increase in premiums for health insurance. And then, of course, our favorite friend, PERS. It continues to go up, and at some point that will change, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, but that's still a big factor for our budget. What is the total percent of, off the top? It's okay. But compared to 30 years ago, it's quite the chunk of our personnel services budget now. Overall, though, we're only increasing FTEs by 0.15. That's actually just to keep on Rebecca, who works on a seasonal part-time basis. She's our former city recorder that is doing records management for us. We have a project to digitize and kind of level up our records, get more stuff out of boxes and more stuff online. So that takes a little bit work. It's minimal. Our total FTEs are still basically 20 and change. And you can see as the city's grown, we've really kind of just maintained our FTEs. We've been mindful about where we add, when we add, how we add FTEs. It's going to be a continuing conversation for the council and for staff of what are going to be the areas that we're going to need to add and how, and can we afford it? Utilities is one thing. When you split a FTE amongst 4 utilities, street, water, sewer, and parks, thank you, it's a little easier, right? You're spreading that out amongst multiple funds with different funding sources. When you're talking the general fund, we've seen the trends. Flat TLT, just a little bit of property tax increase, right? And when you add a FTE, you're talking about $150,000 or more. Just, probably this trend is probably pretty similar to a lot of cities, if not better, as the Oregon kind of resource situation gets worse. Here's this other trend that we're watching. This is the Deschutes County Sheriff's contract expenses. So we had a great deal for many years. Our first 5 years of that updated contract, is based on what it costs for a patrol deputy and the lieutenant to provide service for our city. We had to negotiate a new contract. Well, guess what? We had a lot of inflation for a few years there. A lot of new contracts, labor contracts were signed. And as you know, in Central Oregon, things went up, including salaries for police officers and sheriff's deputies. So we are now paying, those updated rates of what it costs for a deputy and staff and overtime and all that. So that new contract escalated, and then also every year it goes up by a little less than 6%. So we're at about $1.2 million for that sheriff's contract, which is a good size. I mean, that's more now than what our TLT is. It used to be kind of even, or actually more. So our TLT was more than the sheriff's contract. We're about even there.
But Jordan, for the benefit of those who haven't seen this for a while, it's still a good deal. I mean, if we would have our own police department staffed in the way that we are staffed through the sheriff's, this number would be significantly higher.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Plus the insurance and the liability and the patrol cars and all those things. I mean, a patrol car now is probably, what, 150, 200 grand or more?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, so I think that while this has gone up, and while we had a real good deal for a long time, I still think we have a really pretty good deal now compared to what it would cost us to take those services underneath the city's hat.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this number is actually pretty similar to if we did not have a special contract and instead Deschutes County applied the enhanced sheriff's property tax levy rate to the city of Sisters, they would collect around the same amount of money and we would get less service, right? So they would have additional West deputies, but those would be spread out and not just serving the city of Sisters. So we are still getting a good deal, and it's a good thing for the community to have. It's just something to be mindful of. That's a large contract amount, and as I was talking about, projecting out the future and stuff, deputies are expensive, and police service is expensive, and a lot of communities, they have a police department and are paying for, officers, and they have public safety fees at this point, right, to cover those costs, and I'll get into that here in a second, but it's just, something to keep in mind. So talking about the general fund forecast here, now we can get into this and play with some of these numbers to kind of show you how those things affect the budget if we kind of play out different scenarios going forward, right? I'm going to preface this by saying City Sisters budget is healthy. It's good, right? And what I'm going to show you is something that every city in Oregon has. It's when we forecast out, we conservatively forecast what our expenditures are going to be, right? Like, inflation, cost of living adjustments, almost kind of worst case scenario, right? Like we just plan, you hope for the best, plan for the worst sort of thing. So you're forecasting out, your revenues, your property taxes, your TLT, basically every line item. Then you're forecasting out your expenditures, like I said, with, cost of living adjustments, materials and services, the sheriff's contract expenses. And one thing to keep in mind when we show forecasts is that we're also showing you can't predict out the fact that the city will always underspend our budget. Like I mentioned before, we conservatively, budget our expenditures and our revenues. So you can't project out, that sort of circumstance where most likely we'll get additional revenue from property taxes and other sources, and we'll underspend in every department, right? So that adds up into a nice surplus. So you punch in all these numbers, and you get a graph like this, right? For some cities, that line crosses, the red and green. Let me talk you through this. The red is expenditures, green is revenue, right? So if we just look at a snapshot of how much revenue is coming in the general fund, how many expenditures, and then beginning fund balances, you've talked about those. Those are the reserves and contingencies. Why it's dropping. Affordable housing, right? We're doing those affordable housing grants, so that was planned and predicted. But you're always watching these lines, right? Because especially with our operations, what is your ongoing revenue coming into your general fund, and what are your operating expenses coming out, right? And what you're trying to do is get those lines as close as possible. If you get in a scenario where the red line is going up much higher than the green line, you're going to find yourself getting in trouble over time, right? What happens is you start to see these blue lines drop. And what is that? We're spending fund balance. We're spending our rainy day fund. We're spending the unappropriated, reserves. on operations just to keep the current level of service, right? So usually these things look scarier than they are, because our jobs as the managers and finance officials for your city is to make sure those lines stay within, proximity of each other and not do this, what this is showing, right? We would never recommend that we spend reserves on ongoing expenses, right? But what this tells us is that, if we play out the scenarios of kind of slower growth, flat TLT, things going up by a certain percent every year, now we'll start having to probably make some decisions in future budget years of, let's hold the line, maybe not add any more staff. Do we look at additional revenues? Do we look at attrition over time if we need to? These are, like I said, it's a tool for us to kind of be mindful that just like any other city in Oregon, unless we boom again or something, we're probably in a situation where we're just going to have to do more day-to-day, year-to-year management of keeping the budget in line. But I can tell you that this kind of gap, which we have this year of a couple $100,000, is in that margin of error for the city that I could tell you the current year, the 25-26, looks similar to 26-27. And we're going to come in with more revenue than expenditures. Because again, we budget conservatively. We're trying to do that by coming in under and having more revenue than what we budget. So I have confidence that this will be more in line, probably kind of will play out over the next few years. But I will switch over and play with the spreadsheet to show you a couple different scenarios and how these lines do change if we change some assumptions. So any questions about this? Am I confusing anybody? You following? Okay.
I'm not confused, but we also have like this giant unknown out there to the east, our UGB expansion. Yeah. So I think that's going to play with this somewhat.
Sure. Yeah, totally. And I'll show you one of those scenarios. So the thing about the UGB is that there will be a lag until that starts to happen. We'll probably start getting development revenue, like in terms of land use, inquiries and things like that. But the process, as you guys know so well now, of adopting the UGB, making it through the appeal periods, getting recognition from the state, then annexations, then master planning, down to the subdivision, and then it finally gets built, then it comes on the tax rolls, right? So it takes a while for that development actually to show up. So this is what kind of the back end spreadsheet looks like. One thing to point out here, don't focus too much on the numbers. It's, I'm not going to get into the future too much except for showing you the graphs. But one thing what I look at is the red, right? This is what I was talking about. This aligns with these lines here, right? Where the red goes over the green, expenditures over revenues. Within 3% margin, like I said, we're probably going to end up with less spending and more revenue, right? So that doesn't cause me any alarm. It's when you get out in the out years, and there's a little test that I'll show you in this spreadsheet of when do we start getting into kind of the red line territory of not being able to maintain our policy minimums and our reserves, right? That's more of like, oh, okay, we're spending our rainy day fund. Now we're dipping into, we're not able to keep our reserve level at our policy minimums. So let me share a spreadsheet. This is a risky thing to do, and yeah. Okay, so there's that spreadsheet, right, or that graph. The same one that was just on the PowerPoint. And so what we can do with the forecast is we can build in. That shows up. Okay, we could build in little scenarios. And one of the reasons I put this together actually was working with our lieutenant on. We have a provision in our contract to add a fourth deputy. The question was, now that we have the new contract at a higher amount, we saw that trend, could we afford to add a fourth deputy? And knowing that we have a healthy reserve, we've been pretty, we've been growing fast, we've been building up, our general fund. How do I answer this question and provide good information to the city council to be able to make that policy choice? And for me, it's what's the effect on our budget if we add that fourth deputy, which is about $250,000 per year addition, right? So here's an easy thing to do. When we look at that chart, we're already seeing, okay, expenditures starting to outpace revenues. If we add a fourth deputy, doesn't look as good, right? And we all can kind of predict that, that we would probably see those lines do that, separate a little bit more. But doesn't mean that's the end of the conversation, right? How do we make up for that? You know, we can reduce expenditures in other areas, maybe bring that down a little bit, right? Close that gap a little bit more. And then we have the other policy choices too. What does it look like to add a public safety fee? I'm not suggesting we do that with this budget. That's nowhere in the budget message at all. It's not really on the radar. It's maybe a little blip way out there, but I think there's probably 2 to 3, 4 dozen cities that have done it, that have a police station, operation now. And you know, it's something more and more cities are considering, just because the Oregon revenue system has continued to put constraints on cities. So say we add a public safety fee.
Jordan,
Yep.
can you just explain, where would that go? Like, where does that get charged?
So, yeah, so a public safety fee and also say like a street maintenance fee as well. I think 31 cities now have a street maintenance fee, would just go on to the monthly utility bill. Not something that's beloved, I could tell you. People don't like to see more fees, and especially city councils enacting fees without public votes and things like that. But there is a tool that the cities have to add to your water bill. So you'd have a water fee, a wastewater fee, or utility charge, and then at the bottom it would say public safety fee. And maybe it's $5, maybe it's $6. So just for the sake of running a scenario, what does it look like if you had a public safety fee, right? Close that gap, you know, basically almost make up that difference between what a new additional deputy would be by having a monthly public safety fee. Problem with Sisters is we're so small. You know, a minimal fee of $5 or something like that doesn't get you as much as, you know, you would if you're a bigger city, right?
Jordan, since that would be a fee and not a tax, would that go to a citywide vote, or would that be something that would
Doesn't have to.
through council resolution?
Doesn't have to. You can always put an advisory vote on the ballot. But yeah,
That's
fees.
what I thought. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a decision to be made if that time should come as to how we wish to proceed. But
Yeah.
Typically fees are not voted on, but levies are.
Yeah, and the other fee that is, like I mentioned, is getting popular is a street maintenance fee, right? So back to that whole gas tax conversation and the street fund, and 31 cities now in Oregon have enacted some level of either a street utility fee, which I think Ben calls theirs from a couple years ago, they enacted it, or street maintenance fees, where again, it could be $5 to $10 on a utility bill to pay for street maintenance. I didn't add that in here, but I did do, you know, allocate franchise fees to the general fund, right? So, you know, that's another option, is it doesn't require additional fee on anybody, but the impact would be resources to the street fund, right? The impact would be less money into the street fund for ongoing pavement maintenance. So, you know, if we put $250,000, you know, into the general fund instead of having all the franchise fees go into the street fund, you could start making up that gap a little bit as well, if you added a fourth deputy. So again, this is all the sake for an exercise of, you know, working through the option of a fourth deputy, but also just good practice to look at the forecast going forward, right? A lot of things can happen in 5 years. You know, like I said, we manage basically to these lines. We're constantly, you know, monitoring that. You know, it's part of what Joe and I talk about when we put together the budget is how does operations look, you know, revenues and expenditures. You know, when we met as a department team, we went over this forecast. You know, some of the communication departments, let's try to hold the line in terms of our expenditures and, you know, maybe squeeze out some of the things that we tend to not spend a lot, right? Like, you know, we don't have a spend it or lose it mentality, but it doesn't mean we want line items that, you know, really haven't been maximized in the department budget. So I find this helpful. I thought this might be kind of fun to kind of show this year for your all sake to kind of see where our budget is today, but maybe going forward and some of the things that we monitor. You know, if to Councilor McDougall's point about growth, if we had higher growth, like start getting more, that number kind of closes in as well. So there's a lot of factors that can happen. Obviously a lot of unknowns too with these things. But yeah, any other questions?
Doug?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I had a question about the property taxes. So with school enrollment basically being flat or even slightly declining, I would think that expenditures for the school would be less, but the property taxes continue to rise. So are we paying too much in property taxes?
Well, the school, yeah, so
You
the
understand
school,
my
the school
question?
property taxes go into a state school fund, and then they're reallocated to every district on a per pupil basis. The property taxes are based off assessed value, not how much, like household size or students or anything like that. So, someone builds a new home, it's going to sell on the, $700,000 on the market as a market value, but it's probably $250,000 assessed value, and that's paid regardless of
Enrollment.
or anything like that. Yeah. But it is a challenge for the school district. I tell you that because talk to the superintendent and the school board. That graph of the flat line of the school enrollments while the city is growing is probably a tough predicament, right? And it does constrain their budgets. I mean, across the board in Oregon, I think every district is in kind of a situation where enrollments are flat or declining, yet people still expect a certain class size and certain outcomes for education, but they just have less revenue.
And I think as an educator who went through it when they did the equalization and saw districts that were doing quite well get clobbered and districts that really weren't funding themselves all of a sudden become quite wealthy, respectively. It's hard when because it's totally tied to the number of students in the classroom, the amount of money that they receive.
Right.
So your property tax is not reflective of what the school district actually receives because it goes into a big state pool and then it's split up among everybody from the lows to the highs. Highs get less, lows get more. And is it fair? I don't think so. Is it equitable? I don't think so, but the state does. I think it's that. So it's a problem, and I think it also reflects the kind of flat line, the fact that our town is graying, that because of our high costs, and hopefully with what's going to be happening with our UGB expansion and with more affordable housing, we're going to see that number. I would like to hope we're going to see that number increase as we can bring families into this town with young children who can't afford to live here at this point in time. They're going to be in a Redmond or somewhere else where housing costs are lower.
Right, but there's also a lot of families that are having homeschooling,
Yep.
which seems to be on the increase.
Oh yeah.
It has been for several years. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like I'm taking us back in a different direction. So if this is too in the weeds, totally happy to pick it up later. I was just thinking about the fourth deputy question, and presumably at some point there's a cost to not adding it, right? I mean, whether that's a strain on the sheriff's department or it comes back how do you factor that into your forecast of saying, where do those costs of not growing come in?
Yeah. Well, that really comes into conversations with the lieutenant and the sheriff. What is the need? How is the public safety in the community? What is the perception of public safety in the community? Our goal is to maintain basically our coverage and our staffing capabilities and our response times as the city grows. And so, especially if we add UGB, we add more density, we add more, just overall population and calls, right? We want people to continue to feel safe and feel like we're able to respond, appropriately and everything. So that's kind of how it happens, is having those conversations with the lieutenant. For us, is coverage, and getting coverage on those times. So as that kind of elevates and you start hearing more and more, and we do surveys of the public and stuff, there probably will be a point in time where people say, yeah, we're willing to pay for it. Council can tell me today, they can say, we want the fourth deputy. Then the challenge would be, we can do that. We have the law enforcement reserve. We can definitely float for a few years. That's okay. There will be a hard decision in a couple more years, though, of we're cutting services in other areas, or we're going to have to consider a public safety fee or something else. Most cities are probably have done both at this point, cut services, because what's the most important thing for a community is public safety, right? So you're going to probably always lean into
Doing that sooner.
having more
rather than
cops.
later.
Yeah. And we don't want to fall behind either, right? And that's why we've had this conversation for a couple of years. Should we add the fourth deputy? When do we want to add it? Can we afford to add it? Kind of leads me to my last point on, doing forecasts and just the general state of cities in Oregon is that unless you're a Bend or a Sisters or a Prineville where you're growing and you're growing rapidly and you got a lot of tourism and things going on, you are cutting. I mean, it's just the nature of having a restriction on property taxes only at 3%. Costs like PERS and health insurance continue to go up, that your expenses are outstripping your revenues. And that's why you see so many cities having to do street maintenance fees, having to do public safety fees, things like that. And so, unless we continue on that trend, you're probably looking at, like every other city, what are we not going to do anymore? Again, I'm not saying we're in that situation today. We're one of the more fortunate cities in Oregon, but as we add on these layers of like, oh, we should add a fourth deputy, it's like, okay, like, probably going to be talking to you in another year or two about, no, we're probably not going to do something else, or we're going to need revenue for that.
Yeah. Just curious if there are key, public safety metrics or something where you start to put more weight on that.
I mean, for me, it's talking to the lieutenant, who I know would love a fourth deputy. Some of that is the coverage, right? As we get, we're a town that, of our size, really needs good coverage because of the tourism activity, the amount of people that come into town seasonally, and we want to be able to respond to calls around the clock. We do have the West Deputy that fills in on those times, so we do have 24-hour coverage, but we don't have that, city force that is around the clock that, is able to respond, in the middle of the night and things like that. But reports, the activity, the incidents, those are always being, reported and, council updates and things like that.
Yeah, I was just adding to that, because we're more remote officers that have to take potentially someone that they've arrested into Bend. I mean, that's easily hours that they're not here.
Yeah.
While they're processing them in Bend. So it's another consideration, I think.
Yeah, and like a lot of things has gotten more complicated in public safety, right? We have 100 folks that live in the forest, around Sisters, and, Deschutes County pays for the majority of that, the vast majority of, time spent out there, but our officers do as well, respond to calls and things like that. So you layer on that, and then traffic enforcement is another huge one for us too. Okay, I will switch back to the PowerPoint. Thanks for hanging out for an hour here. I'm just gonna start at the beginning. I'm just gonna highlight a few things that are in the budget message, just major expenditures that are council goals. As I get to the end of this. So in the document, as always, we have our adopted city council goals. There's a lot of great stuff in there. So budget message doesn't highlight every goal, obviously, right? I'm just going to focus on some of the major expenditures aligned with those goals. We have under wildfire a couple projects this year. The City Hall defensible space demonstration landscape. So we do have a design. It's like 95% complete. We're finalizing it because the library kind of came in and came out. So getting close to have a final design and hopefully go out to bid soon to do Firewise landscape here at City Hall as a demonstration with the plants and rock and all that stuff. So hopefully inspire folks to do defensible space on their own property. There's a lot more goals under this category that aren't direct like contract expenses. There's a lot of policy work that we're going to be doing this year in wildfire mitigation, defensible space measures and things like that. But another thing that we're planning to do this summer is replace all our bark mulch downtown with rock as sort of leading by example. Not going to be on Cascade. That's going to be another project. This will be on the rest of downtown on the bulb outs, like you see on Hood, for example. We'll take that out and put rock mulch instead of bark. Housing, livability, and growth. Okay, so UGB, there's a hearing tonight, tomorrow night. What day is it today? So Planning Commission, that application is in, and we are well underway on that process, believe it or not. But we still have a lot of work to do. Got to get through the hearings, get the adoption. We're also starting up area planning. Fortunately, we have a grant that covers a large portion of that area planning work, but associated with that is doing utility plan updates, right? We know in our utility plan, like our water master plan, our wastewater master plan, how much we're going to grow. Now we know where, almost. Once it's adopted, we'll know for sure. But now we can start thinking about, okay, where do the pipes go? Where do the pump stations go? How big are those pipes? How do we serve these new neighborhoods? And so we need to update all those master plans. And so we've budgeted in each of the utility funds an amount to start that work. I mentioned the affordable housing grants. That's again carried over. Northwest Housing Alternatives is going to be done next spring. So that will probably go out in the fall, the $500,000 check. And then we're also continuing our Dark Skies incentive programs. Anybody take advantage of the rebate yet? Maybe. All right. Essential infrastructure, I mentioned these big projects. Paul can go over them as well, but $3.6 million for our new big main line coming down off the reservoir on Edgerton Road. We got the well 1 and well 3 improvements in there as well. And then the design work for our new over 2 million gallon reservoir is pretty sizable, but that's a pretty expensive project. I think it's like $7 million. So big project coming up, and again, that's why we are putting in our budget the loan or the financing for the water fund. Then we also have an Edge of the Pines water line replacement project scheduled out of our water fund. It's $1.5 million to do that. Another fun project that's going to help with efficiencies. We got a lot of aging infrastructure out there with our radios. So advanced meter infrastructure. We have radios on it already. Staff drive by, can do the meter reads, but those radios are basically, like most technology, they're obsolete. Just like your iPhone 4 doesn't work anymore. We need to replace that infrastructure. But these new radios that we're implementing will help us be better prepared to implement full AMI infrastructure, where someday, hopefully, we'll be able to invest in having the technology to do water shutoffs from a computer and all that, which a lot of cities have done those sort of investments now. So hopefully we'll be able to do that, especially while we're small and can better afford it. Sewer projects, we're kind of preparing for the Lazy Z and are implementing our wastewater master plans in future years, in the next couple years, but right now we got the Lazy Z phase 1 design that we'll be doing, and then we did the West Side pump station this year, and so in the proposed year we're doing the Rope Street upgrades at almost $1 million. Some street projects that I know you've seen or heard about before. Elm Street, it is out for bid, so that project's going to be under construction soon-ish. We got the North Locust Corridor safety improvements. That's mostly funded by ODOT. Thank you for the small city allotment. So that's some safety improvements along here, kind of to tie in with our new roundabout and alternate route. Hopefully by the end of the fiscal year, we'll be closer to getting those EV chargers installed. It's been slow moving with ODOT with that program. But we do have East Portal paved now, or Gateway Park paved, so those new parking stalls will be able to have the EV charging stations installed on them when we get that grant project going. And then the Cascade safety improvements we've budgeted for the recommendations that came out of that road safety audit that we just did last month.
Jordan, the EV charging stations, are they going to be similar to what's by the library here?
Even better, I believe, yeah.
And how many?
Six? Yeah, six.
They're not as much as I thought they were.
That's not the full amount, I don't think. The 26, yeah. A couple other highlights. There's probably more. I'll let the departments kind of cover anything else that I didn't fully capture, but a couple things that we've been planning on. So these mics have given us a lot of trouble over the last few years. So we're going to do some technology upgrades in the council chambers finally. If you ever try to watch a meeting recently, it's tough. I think we've made some kind of temporary fixes, but it's time. We've budgeted some. We're going to put some acoustical panels. It's going to change the look a little bit, but it won't be hideous. It'll be fine. So we're going to get some better sound. So many people watch meetings from home and all that now that we really do need better mics. So we've budgeted for that, and that's allocated out to all the departments, right? Because everybody uses the council chambers. Park security, yes, we actually have cameras now. We have cameras at our city facilities. And then our next phase will be at our parks. Don't worry, we're not, doing anything as far as Big Brother, red lights. We don't have any lights, speeding or anything like that. This is all about security. No, we don't have that. This is actually just all about security. And we've had some incidents in our parks. Again, tourism town, things happen. So
Are they publicly available to is there a?
I think they're public
online or-
records. They are, but in terms of streaming, we have asked that
Just
question,
asking,
but
I don't know.
Yeah. Not yet.
Okay.
Maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Already, every time I come into City Hall and wave, just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just Joe, though.
Yeah.
I wave at all the
Depends on the neighbors.
And then, so we replaced one of two units on City Hall that failed. We also have one that needs to be replaced or a couple that need to be replaced out at the Public Works facility, which is a similar aged building. So, we're doing our part. We do keep a capital replacement reserve fund to kind of keep our facilities in good working condition. This is a 20-year-old building, but still in great shape. Same with the operations center, so we want to keep it that way. So we have some facility improvements we're doing. All right, that's my presentation. Any general questions before we get into the detail? Jared, do you want to take a break before we do that?
Yeah, but I want to make sure that everything's kind of settled from your budget message portion of the day. Does anyone have anything else from this section? We're going to go into more detail.
I have one question.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So, back on page 36, when it talks about the reserve for future expenditures, which is the largest amount of any of the requirements, I compared that to last year's budget, and it's grown by over $4 million from the previous budget, and I was wondering why it's so large and why it keeps growing so much.
Yes, that's that last line, last row. Yeah, so every fund will be different in terms of whether it's up or down. Most of them were probably up. The biggest change is under that water SDC fund, which is really the reserve coming in. The loan for the future reservoir. So that's the biggest change, I think, in all the reserves was we're planning to get some financing, whether that's a state loan, probably of $8 million, and then spending the majority of that in the next year to build the reservoir. Yeah. Good question. Is that right? Yeah.
I do want to check in, Monica. Do we have anybody online, or do we have any visitor communication?
We have none in person and nobody currently joining us online.
Okay, great. So check that box there after public comment. So I'd like to is 10 minutes good for everybody? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. Back at 10:30. There's some treats and coffee over there, bathrooms over there, and see you soon. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I did want to take a moment. I didn't do it earlier because I wasn't planning on chairing today, but I don't mind because it's really not a big deal. But I wanted to make sure to thank all of our committee members. Honestly, like all of the council sits in on different committees, and then this one, we're all one big team, and it really makes a difference to have a lot of community input, and appreciate taking the time to study ahead of time, come in today, ask thoughtful questions. Yeah, just want to make sure I didn't miss that piece. Also, there may be some areas where we get into more deep conversations with extra participation. I want everybody to be conscious of letting somebody finish before you start, and if we need to, if you need to get a nod from me to take your turn, we'll see how deep it goes today. And so I guess we're getting ready to roll into the budget presentation. I will ask just before we start, what time is lunch coming-ish?
Should be here between 11:45 and 12.
Yeah, we've got dinner and late night snacks too. No, okay, just wanted to have an idea on that. Yeah. All right, so go ahead, Director O'Neill and staff.
All right, thank you. Just before I kick things off, first I would like to share, actually, the budget cover that you all have is wrong, and I want to show you the one that's correct here. Hold on. So for those of you who have kids or been around kids or, lived in with your head above the sand for recently, we couldn't pass upon the opportunity. I mean, 26, 27. So,
What does that mean?
I don't know either. But the nice thing is I don't think a lot of kids really think that's cool anymore. So that's probably yeah, it's on its way out. Anyway, thanks, Julie. Julie put that together. It was kind of a fun little deal. So I'd also like to thank all the staff that had a lot to do with the preparation of this budget. From Kim, Carrie, Scott, Jackson, Paul, Monica, and of course Jordan. To not only review but incorporate all of their feedback and their numbers into this budget. So I'm just kind of compiling everything that everybody has provided to me. So really thanks to that. It takes a big team effort to get this put together. So thank you all for that. So since Jordan covered, I think, most of the major revenues, major expenditures really thoroughly in that budget message, I'm not going to go through those again like I typically do. And I think we'll touch on just a lot of the major things going on in each respective department and fund, and I think it'll make more sense then as well. And it'll probably be a little bit of a reiteration of what he talked about earlier in the budget message. So if that all works for you, I think that is the approach that we're going to take. And of course, as Jordan said, if you have any questions, throughout that, then just please feel free to speak up. So we're going to jump into the general fund, and I'll follow along here with the pages, so we can kind of keep on track there, if that works for you all. And we will be on page 41.
Hand it back to me.
Way to knock out 40 pages right off the bat.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you recognize staff. Thank you, Joe, for all the work you do and putting together the budget, and Kim and monitoring all our finances and accounting and all that. It does take a team to put together a budget, and of course the department heads are instrumental in all that as well, writing narratives, updating all the spreadsheets. So thanks. And Joe, I'm going to ask you a question. For sort of a reader's guide question here. So one question that folks might have is, for each of these departments, FTEs look different than the actual bodies that you would think live in these departments. So, like, for example, as we look at the council manager department, we have FTE of 1.45. The reason being here, in Sisters, we allocate out the FTE to different departments and funds depending on the type of workloads the staff are doing, right? So time is actually distributed amongst multiple departments, and that's why you don't see an FTE count like, well, it's Jordan and Carrie and Monica and a little bit of Rebecca. It should be 3 point something. Instead, those FTEs are, like I said, distributed out amongst the departments and funds. Is that right? Okay. No more technical explanation for that. We do have so one thing you don't see in this budget is there's other spreadsheets behind the scenes that have all the cost allocations and things like that we calculate. Same with personnel costs. And so, there's a lot more detail that goes into some of these numbers that you see. But a lot of that is just, again, something that we have to kind of calculate and process, and then we plug it into the spreadsheets that we present before you. So, council manager, you've heard the spiel before. This is the department that houses the expenses for the city council, and also all the administration expenses. A lot of special projects fall in the council manager department. We don't really have a special projects department. Sometimes parks or maintenance might capture some of those costs, but a lot of the expenses in council manager might be like, one of the big expenditures is the affordable housing grants, right? So it comes out of the housing reserve. We need to expense it. So there's a line item in the city manager or the council manager department to do that. Another reader's guide thing to point out that finance director added this year is a more detail than you've ever had before on contracted services. When I saw this idea, I was like, ooh, it's great, but I can see it generating some questions. It's always good to be transparent and show all the detail. And one of the things it does kind of show you is some of the information that we do when we pull together a budget, right? We don't zero base things necessarily, but we come pretty close. We're small enough that every year we can do a full assessment of our departments and add up basically, what are we going to spend this year? How much is it going to cost to do IT services? How much is that code update going to cost when we have to update our ordinances into the online mini code system? And so that gives you a breakdown of one of our biggest materials and services line item, which is contracted services. So you'll notice that I think in every department, Joe's broken out the contracted services. The only reason I cringe is like, oh, I could see that generating even more questions because now we have these subline items of what do you mean by digital documentation tools? But again, this is just to be.
What do you mean by digital documentation tools?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Right on cue. Not a lot of surprises in this budget this year, or things changing. Legal fees kind of ebb and flow year to year, and I'll talk about that. Maybe I'll just talk about it now. One thing that we're anticipating would be legal fees associated with like the urban growth boundary expansion. That would fall under community development, but the legal fees within the council manager, a lot of it has to do with like affordable housing grants and grant agreements and contracts and deed restrictions, some governance issues sometimes when we have procedural questions and things like that. So that gets expensed out of the council manager department as opposed to, the utility funds or community development when it's specific to a certain project in water or, like I said, anything that was related to land use planning. One thing that we're going to be working on this year with the council is in community services grants. Grants are allocated in August. In the summertime, we solicit the community for applications. The council is interested in kind of looking at grants in terms of what do we provide organizations that provide a community benefit to sisters on an ongoing basis year to year. There's a few examples where we, get a direct benefit, like from giving Family Access Network funds for utility bill assistance programs and things like that. Are there other organizations and sisters that should have a special carve out? We haven't proposed anything in this budget yet because we really haven't had any conversations with council, and I didn't want to presume. We kind of looked at different methodologies of like, well, if an organization's gotten a grant for the last 10 years, should they automatically get funding? And I don't think it's an easy yes. And I think it's up to the city council to kind of set that direction for us. So I think when we do the community grants this year, that would be something that we want to engage the council with that grant process of having that conversation of that 30,000. Should we allocate, a portion of that for future years just to do a direct allocation to some of these organizations? Not necessarily a time and place to talk about that policy, but there isn't, just for council's knowledge, there isn't like a separate line that we're putting in this budget for direct allocations. We just maintain the $30,000 under the community services grant that will be allocated out in August. Other than that, like I said, the big expense will be that affordable housing grants. For sure, Northwest Housing will be happening in the fall, probably around September, October when we allocate that $500,000, and then the $182,000 is for Habitat for Humanity's Large Commons project for the affordable housing portion of that project. And then I did already mention earlier in the budget message that we are accounting for a small increase in FTEs for the record specialist position. And like I mentioned, we do have a kind of a thought to have a bigger project that won't be really expensive, but it'll have some costs associated with it to do more electronic records and records management upgrades. So, any questions?
Quick one.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, education.
Mm-hmm.
Such a broad description, and I noticed that this year we're going to have about 650 left out of the allocated amount. That goes towards.
Yeah, education is conferences and trainings. Mileage and travel reimbursement is also a portion of that. So if there's flights associated with that, yeah. So conferences were actually LOC. Trying to think minutia, but really it varies year to year depending on who goes where, and if LOC is somewhere else, or if OCCMA is somewhere else, or ICMA, then we may not go to those conferences, or we budget and plan for it. So that's what.
And that includes council expenses as well, does it not?
It does.
Thank you.
Yeah. Although Mayor and Council, I think, captures. The Mayor and Council is just reimbursements. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Thanks. Joe, I like this.
You like the contracted services? Yeah, that might be problematic to Jordan's point, but it does give you a lot of detail. That number has just gotten a little bit, I think, larger and more complex over the years. So thanks to Kim for helping me dig into that in detail a little bit more. We kind of refined that a little bit deeper than we've done in the past. So, and then without further ado, the finance department. So I'm on page 44 here. So finance, not a lot of huge projects that we do on a regular basis, but I feel like there's always a lot of time in these little projects. So, some of the things that that we accomplished this year that we've had for the last couple of years is fee assessments for capital projects. So we'll see this as we go through the utility funds, water, wastewater. But, as we saw some of these bigger projects come online in our 5-year capital improvement project list, we need a way to pay for them. And some of them you need to pay with other like maybe an operating fund contribution for like an SDC fund project. So we adjusted our utility rates to accommodate that, and so we've been tracking that with those projections throughout the last few years, and we'll continue to do that. And so that's been kind of a big part of of our job in evaluating that, especially how the community reacts to certain changes in like a water volume rate, for instance. And then some little things, our purchase order process, these are more internal control items here. Another big accomplishment was the financing in the Urban Renewal Agency, and you'll see that come up later on. That was a great achievement for us to kind of strategize how to come up with
the remaining resources in order to do some of these projects in the Urban Renewal Agency. And the Finance Department took control of that project. And we continue to update IT technology as best we can. Next year, so with these big projects coming up, again, you'll see a lot of that activity later on. We need to make sure that our utilities are able to contribute to these projects efficiently. So, and hitting that nail right in the middle, not overinflating our utility rates too much and not enough, so we can't contribute to those projects. So, probably engaging through an RFP to kind of a firm that specializes in these kind of strategic kind of models and placements is what we're going to do there. And then another major program that we're refining is our backflow prevention program. If you're a city resident, you've probably got a lot of communication about that recently. That's been kind of a process that's been maybe a little bit more inefficient, I would say, in the past, and we're just the Public Works Department and the Finance Department kind of collaborating together to make that more efficient. So I think it's going to be kind of a tough adjustment year here, but we'll be happy that the new process is put in place, and that's easy for me to say. And then lastly here, water meter registers. Jordan talked about that a little bit. It's one of those things. So if you have a water meter, the top of it is called an AMI or like a radio, and that communicates, the reading. And we've incorporated that replacement project into our capital replacement reserve. So we've tried to prepay for that. And we're at the point where we don't want to be at the position where we're not able to read meters because of the older equipment. So we've taken kind of the stance of an initiative, I guess, of replacing those in this next fiscal year. So that's going to be actually a lot. It's a lot of public works time, of course, but it'll be a lot of finance time as well. And then you can kind of see the summary of a lot of those things I just talked about on page 45, including contracted services. And a lot of those, again, are allocated. So IT support is allocated. You have your general fund, you have, city manager, you're going to have, finance, maintenance, and water, street, sewer. So you'll see a lot of these pop up in terms of contracted services throughout the budget as well.
Just ask a quick comment.
Yep.
So are there actually different tools as well under these, or is it just like the person's subscription who sits in each department? Like, just to your point, like for IT services or for documentation tools, right? Is that representing the person there, or is it actually a different?
It's a contract, so it's not personnel. So that's a great point, but it is allocated very similar to a personal services, like an employee would be.
Yeah. No, I guess, sorry.
Sorry.
I just meant like, is like for the subscriptions, is this like the seat for the person who's in that department that's contributed there? Or is it actually like a different set of IT tools that you use in finance versus somewhere else?
It's just it's basically a contract for those services. It's not a person.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
No? Well, so it's not a seat, it's not per person funds. But I'm not, are they like different sets of tools? Like, are there particular finance software tools that you use that are covered here that are not in the general fund? I guess?
Yes, it is. That is actually in a separate line item. That's not in contract services, but yes, yeah.
Sorry, it was same line item. I just was.
No, you got, yeah.
Same things or not, yeah.
That would be the 710 line?
Yes.
And then,
to your point, the IT is one contract and it's divided amongst all the different
Correct.
things.
Yep.
I have another question, and that just a curiosity question. LGIP service fee, that has been a blank line. At what point do those drop off the budget page? I know they stay on every budget I've ever been in. They stay on for a period of time until they age out.
Yeah, that's probably going to go next year. I think there's a couple columns there of older years where that's been there. That's why it's stuck. But yeah, probably one of those that could drop off.
And what is that fee in particular?
So there used to be a if you made any kind of transactions from the LGIP to the checking account, there'd be a service fee involved in that. Local government investment pool. So that's like our savings account is the easiest way to put that. And instead of placing that there, because it's only 5 cents per transaction, we put it into permits and fees, which is $7.27, I think.
Yeah. So that should drop off in the future.
Yeah. But great observation there. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to maintenance and page 46. Jackson, do you want my mic?
Hey, Jackson. And anyone who comes up, can you just introduce yourself for anyone who might not have met you before?
Of course. Jackson Dumange, Operations Manager for the Public Works Department. Good morning, everybody. Going over the Maintenance Department. This one's pretty general, usually vehicles, building maintenance, facilities maintenance. Last year, Jordan mentioned some of that, assessing aging HVAC equipment here at City Hall. Going to be moving on to Public Works HQ. The HVAC there is having some heating issues, so fortunately we can tackle that during the summer before winter hits. Security camera installation at some of our facilities. We're going to be moving on to some of our critical parks where those security cameras make the most sense. And then the wildfire mitigation work for City Hall, the demonstration garden. We're working on wrapping up design, and then hopefully next year we can begin constructing that.
I appreciate having these noted that match our council goals. That's very helpful. Thanks for doing that.
So the security cameras and the Firewise landscaping projects are reflected in the capital outlay line. We are seeing, we have aging facilities approaching that 20-year mark, so a lot of our facilities need some maintenance. You see some larger numbers in the requested budget for 26-27 as opposed to last year. And then again, noted in the contract services, you see the City Hall cleaning reflected there, as well as our sprinkler monitoring, fire system annual tests, generator annual tests, just to make sure everything is up and running and functional. Any questions?
Just a comment, I think it's for Joe more than for you. Line item 781. Chamber building maintenance. It's not the chamber building anymore. I'm wondering if we should perhaps change that to reflect the current use of the facility. I know you can't. I know it's hard for you. You're struggling with it, but I think it's time to let it move on.
I have a hot button question item. If we ever feel like we need to augment our trash collection pickup in the downtown core on the weekends, does that fall under this maintenance department? And if so, where in the budget? Sorry, that's a little curveball there. Now it's fun. Yeah.
Jackson can jump in too, but a couple of different approaches. If we decide to do that, we can either look at an in-house solution that would probably be spread into the street fund for that side, or Jackson mentioned the city park restroom and city hall cleaning contract, so there's also that avenue that we can explore as well, which we're looking at both options.
Okay. Yeah. It's a minor item, but it's recent. It's recent.
Yeah.
I guess.
So that would hit contract if we had to increase that contract for that.
Thank you for thinking about it. I appreciate
that. And since I don't see trash pickup anywhere, that's built into our agreement.
Yep. Yeah, our franchise agreement includes all public trash.
And a question again. I love these blank lines. 797 dumpster reticles. That probably refers back to when we were providing our own garbage service?
Yeah. Or if we had additional need for that,
I think we can hide some of these lines in the future.
Thank you. That would be nice.
But we might need that one.
But we might need that one now if we can start picking up. But I'm going to be your bookkeeper on some of this stuff. Okay.
One thing to note about the proposed budget is we do show the column projected year end, right? Again, one of those dangerous things that we do, but it's useful, right? Because what you'd lose the thread of like beginning fund balance estimates and things like that if you didn't get a chance to actually see what we're estimating spending through the remaining of the current fiscal year. So one thing to note about this department, though, is that we'll likely look to come to council to have at the end of the year, this happens a lot where we do budget supplements or resolution transfers because capital, in particular, capital outlay has exceeded our budget. And that's, I think, the fail of the city hall HVAC.
HVAC and then security cameras. So if you remember, security cameras are actually budgeted in 24, 25. Those just kind of fell into 26.
Yeah.
I'd like to back you up on those numbers too. If you looked at the projected year ends, just in general, they're mostly lower because that's part of the conservatism that we do at budgeting time at your level before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do just as department heads and city management, we do the best we can to project those, right? Because if we're going to make a budget adjustment, that has to be really in May, right now, for June adoption, and then those bills might even come in July. So you have to be that far ahead of those projections, because if you incur those expenses maybe at the end of the year and you don't have permission to spend that money, then that's an issue.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, any other questions or comments on the maintenance? Why don't you go ahead and stay, Jackson? We're just gonna take you back. We've got next up, we've got Jordan, but Jackson's gonna be back in action. Yeah, we're on page 48, tourism department.
I'm gonna let Carrie talk about
Carrie.
tourism.
Come on
We're all
down.
going to be a part of this today.
Hi, Carrie Prosser, Assistant City Manager. So just a little bit of update on the Destination Management Organization, Explore Sisters, that the city helped to stand up in 22-23, and they are now flying on their own and well on their way. They do carry, as Jordan covered, they collect about 33% or $350,000 of our TLT of the close to 2 million that we get in that fund. And then they also receive anything over that amount that comes in excess. So when you look at the numbers from the resources, you'll see this year we're projected at a 413,000 plus to give them, which is over that 350,000. They get that excess. And next year we're projected, and this year we're projected down 2%. I think we're looking pretty close to coming in flat this year, so in a little bit better shape. And then next year, it was a fine line between being flat and down 1%, so we're kind of in that middle round there, as we have not been adding any hotel rooms and or many short-term rentals onto the book, and that's really what increases that TLT number. So we're estimated to just kind of be flat with that area. One of the things that's been great about working with Explore Sisters is we have 2 positions on the board, both non-voting, but that a city council liaison, which is Michael Prieden, and myself, that are at all of their board meetings and really have an open dialogue about what they're doing and how they're doing their funds. We look at their budget numbers every single month. So we have a lot of involvement with Explore Sisters. Last year, we also, they were part of help us develop our wayfinding signage plan. Scott Humpert, their executive director, was on that committee and will continue to help us as that project moves forward. And then the Dark Sky Education program, I know that Scott as well worked with Scott Woodford and that group to really push that forward with some events and some marketing pieces. Going in 26, 27, again, we will maintain a relationship with Explore Sisters, and they'll continue to work with Explore Sisters on the Dark Sky Education programs, and probably much more as things come up from their council might need. And Scott recently came and did an annual review with the council. So, and then I think one of the questions, and I don't know if anybody had that, when you look at the resources, you see the 413,000, which is a little bit of the number that's flat for next year, but total budget number is $420,000. So that general fund subsidy is a might happen. We wouldn't be subsidizing it technically. It's if they make more money, then they would be up at the 420. So that, Joe, you were explaining it.
Yeah, no, great job. We just kind of placed that $420,000 there, so we didn't, have to move that around too much. You could put it at 413, 381, but that's an awful sharp target to hit there, which is probably unrealistic. And for the same reasons I just talked about, it's nice to have a little bit of a cushion there. I think if you remember 2 years ago, we had to adjust that about $25,000, and just a little bit of cushion there just to set us up for success. I mean, yeah, and if we had receipts, above our budget, and then those restricted dollars were greater than the 413,000, then we might have to increase, the 420, which would be great. But as of now, we just kind of put that as a conservative placeholder.
Questions? Yeah, so we don't put staff here. I'm already hearing your time involved with being on the Explore Sisters board, et cetera, and I'm assuming other activities.
No, I believe that's just part of what my day-to-day job would be, part of those pieces. We don't necessarily allocate every piece of my position out, and this would be one of those areas where that would not be pushed out.
Yeah, we used to contribute and allocate personal services to this fund. I think we did it for a year in 2019, but we since stopped doing that. So that's why we still have that earmark in there in the budget detail, which we can probably just hide going forward for next year. So we're on an anti-dash movement here, which I love.
Just for general knowledge too, I can think of 3 projects that are going to add to the TLT next year. They're either in planning or under construction. So it's not a whole lot of rooms, but it's going to be a net add to these numbers starting next year.
Which ones?
There are 3 buildings under construction, maybe 4, that are going to have rooms that add to the TLT. They're smaller boutique type hotels or short-term rentals that I know of that are going to add to this starting next year. So maybe 10 rooms-ish. Yeah, but 10 rooms is 10 rooms, right? Times 300 nights a year, so that's a lot.
How many, what percentage of our TLT comes from our campground?
Good question.
I don't imagine it's huge, but I was just wondering.
Off the top of my head, I think about $35,000 or $40,000.
Not huge. 10% maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for Carrie? Thanks, Carrie. All right, Jackson's back.
Jackson's back. Parks. We're on page 50.
Thank you for the page updates, by the way.
I'll try.
That helps dumb people
I
like
butchered
me.
that last year, so I'm trying to be better.
Yeah, no, it's great.
So for our Parks Department, some exciting things happened last year, completing Northwest Park master plan, putting finishing touches on our Gateway Park and Mobility Hub, formerly known as East Portal. That includes the last portion of parking, also in preparation for the EV chargers there. Constructing a dog park, getting some fencing around the community labyrinth. ADA accessible sidewalk to the Veteran Memorial Stones at Village Green Park, and replacing a very old cedar shake shingle roof on the picnic structure with a nice metal roof, addressing our wildfire mitigation plan. Going into next year, we got some of the big things out of the way this year. We need to do some maintenance at First Street Park. Those beautiful decorative tiles are just aging and getting knocked down. So we need to order up some more of those, get professional in there, and re-adhere those so they continue to last. Continue working on replacing dark sky lighting. We were able to get many of our facilities switched out, but there's still quite a few lights that need to be changed to dark sky compliant lighting fixtures. And then replacement of a drinking fountain at Village Green Park. It's kind of an old, plumbed through a wooden log. Not that old, no. But just making sure everything that folks need at our parks is working properly and looks good. Again, Noting contract services, you'll see City Park restroom cleaning on there. And then as well, the Deschutes County inmate work crews that help us maintain our right-of-ways.
Questions or comments? Looks like some thinking's going on, so we'll give it a pause for a moment.
I have a question, but it may not be a totally replacing the drinking fountain, the old log. Is that going to be something that is more of a structure that would also fill water bottles or those sorts of things, or is it just going to be upgrading what's there?
Considering most of those units do have that incorporated for a minimal amount increase, it's probably something we would be looking at.
Yeah, we did that in some of the Lamland parks when I was on that board. They get used.
A lot easier than trying to aim the fountain into your water bottle.
Yeah. Thank you. Just curious.
Jackson, for replacing the lighting with dark sky compliant, does that include lighting down Cascade?
No, that's just park lighting.
Just parks?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we're in parks.
First Street Park's a great example. There's a few bollards in that park that the color temperature is too blue. They're not warm enough. And then you'll notice small lights along the stage steps. Those need to be switched out as well. And then as well, our campground. There's a few overhead lights throughout the campground, not just making those dark sky compliant, but also warmer so they're not as intrusive to campers.
Are we lighting the dog park?
Currently, no. There are some overhead lights just as part of the overall project that will probably lend some light to that dog park, maybe during twilight hours, but certainly not intended to be used after hours.
And as a neighbor of the campground, those light improvements would be also very pleasant for those of us that live nearby.
Okay. Going to move on if no one has anything else. Okay, thanks, Jackson. Mr. Wheeler.
I'm back. Okay. We talked a lot about law enforcement or police contract already. Page 52. Lieutenant Davis is here. If you have any policing questions, now is your opportunity. I will put him on the spot, and then he will come up. You don't have to, but if there is questions, I'm sure he's happy to answer them. Oh, maybe there will be. Yeah, come on up. Come on up.
We'll ask you a question just to get you up here.
He's going to get me back later, he said. So it's more of a general question, and I'm sorry that I'm taking up budget time for this, but with the new sheriff situation, the traffic enforcement part of it has always kind of been led by education by the previous sheriff. Is the new sheriff going to be any different with traffic enforcement and the style of how you guys police that?
I would say no, it's still based on voluntary compliance as far as citations versus warnings. We still give probably 2/3 warnings to citations in that ratio. But what I would say is that overall in the county, we are dedicating more patrol time for traffic enforcement. So like when patrol teams outside of our group around the county, when they have additional staffing, they're designating a couple of people to just not take calls, but go and do traffic enforcement. So throughout the county, we're seeing more traffic enforcement, trying to reduce fatal crashes most likely, or most is kind of our biggest focus.
Thank you.
We don't talk about it normally, but can you give us a sense of kind of previous, current, and future staffing of state police in this corner of the county, especially around the city?
I would say that they, from what I have heard, they are going more to a 24-hour model of coverage. Historically, there would be troopers on after 2 a.m., and now probably more for the Tri-County area. They have a couple of troopers on, is my understanding, that are 24 hours a day now, which we haven't seen in a long, long time. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to be a big impact on our operation. Or, we work with state police mostly out on state highway for crash response and things like that, but we don't interact very much with them here in town.
Thank you.
And I would just add, related to your previous comment, that I have, in my trips back and forth to the doctor's offices in both Redmond and Bend, seen an increased presence of sheriff cars clearly parked and doing some form of traffic enforcement. So it is visible, it is showing up, and hopefully on 126 and in some parts of 20, it's going to be slowing people down, especially in around the areas that we've had some of those crashes on 126.
And here in town, here in town, obviously with the public safety surveys, traffic safety is always the number one concern, and so we dedicate a lot of our time to doing traffic enforcement, and then some additional overtime as well, focusing on that.
Anything else? Do you want to say anything, Jordan?
No, just to recap,
yeah.
I showed in the general fund forecast and also in, sort of looking at the trends. We talked about the contract expenditures. What breaks that down is, the per hourly cost of the deputies and the lieutenant, but also we do pay a portion of the substation here in Sisters, which is just down the road here, and then overtime as well for those popular weekends and events in town where we need extra coverage if it falls outside of the regular scheduled times. And then looking forward, this is the second year of the new contract, which is I think a 5-year with the 6% escalation each year. So probably by year 3 or 4, we're starting to talk to the sheriff again about the contract and where we stand. And part of my purpose in showing that forecast was to kind of start having that conversation about the 4th deputy. I feel like I owe it to the lieutenant, but also the council has been talking about this for a couple years. So now we have a kind of a financial picture of that, and sort of ideas in the back of your head as we kind of look forward. And happy to answer any of those questions you might have, or have the lieutenant ask or answer them as well.
Is there an option for, rather than a full-time deputy, for a part-time deputy shared maybe with other cities? Does that model exist? Or
I would not traditionally, and just kind of back up a little bit. Currently, we have 7-day-a-week coverage from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and then we have a swing shift that's Wednesday through Saturday from 2 to midnight. And so part of what we've been talking about is we have gaps from Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday night where our city coverage stops at 6 p.m. So part of what we would be talking about with the 4th deputy is increasing our coverage to 8 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. And so that's kind of what you would be getting if you were to decide to do that, is just covering that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night. With shift change, we have our West deputy. Sometimes they're coming from Bend or Redmond. We really don't have any deputies that live out in the west part of the county other than deputies that are working here in the city. And so, sometimes we have a lag in coverage, right? Or if that West deputy gets sent to Redmond or Terrebonne to cover, then we have gaps where we don't have that West deputy out here. So that's, what we see now is on that Wednesday through Saturday, we have that swing shift coverage. And so sometimes there's 3 of us on Wednesdays. That's our rollover day, so all 4 of us work. But we have that coverage in between shift change where that West deputy is maybe a lag in coming out here. Our city deputy that's working till midnight covers not only the city, but there could be a hot call out in Tollgate or Crossroads or a crash on the highway that they're available for. So, but we haven't really typically split like a position.
Is there any data suggesting, what does it look like in terms of calls where maybe there isn't someone available to respond? Is it distributed across the week in an uneven way? Is there any sense that those days are more or less incident-full than other days?
Yeah, we have basically looking through our stats, Mondays are typically a very busy day because people will have something happen to theft or whatever over the weekend, and they typically I don't want to deal with it till Monday. So Mondays are big at our station for walk-in complaints and things like that, things that happen over the weekend. And then we put that staffing Wednesday through Saturday till midnight because those are typically our busiest evening hour nights where bars open, restaurants open till late, and so we have that coverage. But yeah, I can get you some numbers if you want to see what that is. But they typically,
what is the percentage of unmet incidents or something like that?
Yeah, and our calls typically don't start till about 8 a.m. and they drop off severely at midnight. So we try to stagger our people to cover those busy hours.
I was actually wondering if it's necessarily like a fourth staff member or if it's more of a fourth shift that has people brought in from different parts of the county. Like which, I guess I don't really know how that's done.
Yeah, one thing you get with a city assistor's deputy is continuity. And what we have now is with our West deputies, they come out here, they may be for a day or a week, sometimes a month, but they don't have the continuity of knowing the community and what the problems are and knowing who the players are, so to speak, in the community. And so when you have a dedicated deputy that works here full time, so Deputy Hudson's been out here 6 years, so he knows everybody, right? And so part of that is just having that continuity of that same person working every day out here. And so that tends to be more effective. Yeah.
And just for everybody in the room, we get City Council, we get monthly updates from Lieutenant and full stats every month. And Jordan, you meet with them regularly. So, yeah, we get a lot of updates.
And I think it's important to note that the center station, whatever you want to call it, out on Barclay, that is staffed by the Sheriff's Department by an individual, 8 to 5?
8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. So yeah.
Yeah. So that's not a part of this contract. That's a portion of it. Portion of it is, yeah. Support costs, yeah.
Is it something I was thinking about this morning? So if we were to add a fourth deputy, and going back to Councilor Preden's comment about our monthly reports that we get from you, does that mean we're going to see an increase in citations and arrests?
Yeah, I mean,
which could look like we have more crime.
Potentially, I mean, what you would see is more self-initiated activity. When you have extra eyes out there, extra patrol car, you're going to see more citations, more traffic stops, more self-initiated activity. Not necessarily, call volume increasing, but you'll see the proactive side of it as far as deputies out on the street, stopping cars and interacting with the public. It also gives us one other person to staff special events. So rodeo parade, quilt show, things like that, where that's one other person we can bring into the fold because like during rodeo week, we all work extended hours just to make sure everything's covered here. So give us one more person to cover those events.
Good question.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Any other questions or comments? We appreciate you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a new contestant coming up.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Woodford, Community Development Director for the City of Sisters. I think Jordan did a really good job of giving a kind of a snapshot of where we are with growth in the community, so I won't kind of reiterate all that. If you have any questions on it, feel free to ask me. Just looking back towards last year's accomplishments, we were heavily involved, obviously, with the Urban Growth Boundary Amendment that we undertook. It's still under process, but we did a lot of work on that and are making some headway. Still a lot of work to go, but we're approaching hopefully a milestone there in the process soon with local adoption of the Urban Growth Boundary Amendment with any luck. We also, just staying on that subject for a second, looking forward to the 26-27, assuming that the Urban Growth Boundary Amendment is adopted, we will go into the next stage of the process, which is what we call area planning. And that basically takes kind of the raw boundary that we end up with and starts to apply some definition to it in terms of land use designations, where things are going to go, kind of the more planning related stuff, the stuff that I think the community is really interested in terms of what the vision is for it out there. And so that's a public process. It's a process we utilize some assistance to help pull off in the form of consultants. We will continue to utilize the services of MIG to help with the area planning, and we've bolstered that contract a little bit. The original contract that they had, we started several years ago, and there's been some twists and turns in that process. So there's a need to add a few more dollars to that budget to get us across the finish line with the area planning. And then we'll be going out for, we secured a grant through the state Department of Land Conservation and Development. There's a lot of money out there right now that the city can take advantage of for anything that helps with housing production in the community. And so it shows 110,000 in contracted services in our budget, but 75,000 of that is going to be reimbursed by the state for planning work. And there's another grant that we'll be going out for here shortly that will help provide some other services that we might need, such as wetland delineations or having somebody come in and help us with financing options for infrastructure in the urban growth boundary. So it's great to have opportunities to have the state pay for those projects. In terms of accomplishments, looking back again, accomplishments from last year, as maybe development levels level off a little bit, and we don't have quite as many big projects going on. We still have quite a bit of smaller projects, infill projects, I would call them, that we are experiencing in the community. As there's not just, I think it's a function of a lot of things, the economy and construction costs and all that. But the fact that we don't have a lot of greenfield opportunities out there for new master plan development, we're seeing people get a lot more creative, and with some of our code changes are doing more infill development, which still requires planning approval and time for our staff to review. But we've also taken advantage of that time to update our development code and do things that when you're really busy with land use, you don't get an opportunity to do. So example of that was implementing some of the capital goals with the building hardening requirements, defensible space. We did a long-range planning project where we took a look at the Northwest Park area that is adjacent to the Woodlands development, taking a look at what kind of uses could potentially occur on that land. And so we managed that project as it went through and came to a successful conclusion. We implemented defensible space regulations that apply to new development to reduce wildfire danger, and are working on a variety of other things. I won't go into more detail, but one of the other aspects of funding requests was the dark sky lighting. We started out last year, we initiated the first residential rebate program for our dark skies for residential property owners to request help with changing out lights to meet the new ordinance. We've had some modest interest so far. We're still trying to get that program. We continue to get that program publicized out there, and are looking for some ways we can get more people interested in it, and hopefully get it expanded to commercial development as well, which in many respects is the bigger lift and maybe the bigger part of the light pollution problem. So.
Scott, was that $5,000 we started with?
Correct.
Right, and so that has not been
It's not been depleted yet. No.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're looking at ways that we can generate some more interest, some marketing.
What is the average size of the reimbursement?
What's the size of it?
Yeah.
It's up to $200 per property and $50 per light.
I unscrewed my light bulbs. Can I get the $50?
You unscrewed your light bulbs? Sure. Any questions I can answer?
Encouraging property owners for defensible space standards. What line item is that?
That's more of a staff level effort, I think. You know, we have worked on some marketing materials and utilized other entities that have created those kind of flyers that tell people kind of what they should be doing. So we're kind of leveraging some of that stuff that's already been done. But I think there's more work to be done on that front, and we haven't really kind of hit that kind of our stride on that one just yet. In terms of, we know we passed the regulations now, and we have existing regulations now. And now it's an opportunity of making sure that the community continues to get that message. And there's been some talk about in the future of, you know, similar to the dark skies, that there's dollars that might be associated with helping offset the work that's required to do that. Jordan, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, the potential cost would be like a direct mailing. You know, we've talked about like a postcard or you know, some sort of letter to everybody about defensible space and wildfire resiliency. We did include information now to the SDR license holders to include as information to give to, you know, tenants and folks that stay at hotels and lodging establishments here. But I think we need to, yeah, we still need to we had an early version last year, and I think we need to refine that, and then it would be the cost of basically mailing it to every household.
I think what I'm inferring, if I can, is maybe a question around whether we are currently, or we will maybe discuss it and then set it aside later, funds for helping residents mitigate some of their issues.
Yeah, it's one of those. Sometimes we do this, sometimes we don't. Right? Is put in like a placeholder for these type of programs. So this year we didn't until we have that conversation with council. We had the joint meeting with the fire board, and now it's like, let's refine these ideas before we actually put a dollar amount to what are we talking about. You know, but we have talked about the fact that we have a kind of a program we set up with the Dark Sky Incentive Program. Could we do something similar for defensible space work that folks do on their private property? Nothing's budgeted yet for that until we have that kind of direction from council.
Where would that come from if you did decide to do that?
If it's downtown property for like commercial businesses or downtown property owners, it could come from the Urban Renewal Fund. If it's citywide residential properties, it would be general fund.
Let's just buy a big pile of gravel. Yeah. You get a gravel. You get some gravel. You get some gravel.
And a lot of volunteers. Yeah.
And in my usual comment, we still have building and electrical inspection fees as a revenue source under community development, since that all has been going to the county for a significant amount of time. It may be useful to remove those so they're not confusing, perhaps, in the future to anyone looking at the budget.
The Dash police has spoken. They didn't even dash as I saw it.
Anyone have any more questions or comments for Scott at this time? All right. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, Carrie's coming back for economic development.
All right. Some of these reviews and the objectives, Eric Strobel, who runs our economic development department, did put those together. So if I can't answer those questions, perhaps he can or Jordan can. I just wanted to really highlight that we are in the third year of an agreement with Economic Development for Central Oregon for our program here, and They did come to us this year and ask for an additional 3% on top of the 3% that was in the agreement. And that is what we have put in the budget, is an additional 6% for the next 2 years of that contract. And they basically cited rising employee healthcare and overhead cost, as well as expanded scope of work to include non-traded sector support, which Eric has been doing for us kind of off the side for a number of years. So that is the number that is in the budget right now. And then just for an update, he is still working with the SCED board, which is the Sisters Economic Board, working on business support services, both traded sector and retail businesses. And then he kind of listed through all the people that he's been working with. Been working with the vision implementation team on workforce housing, childcare options, and public transportation. He continues to work with those groups on those projects, and then building the membership to his board as well. So 26, 27, still looking at fostering traded sector economic development and continue to focus on workforce housing, the childcare options, that public transportation is kind of an ongoing project. And then the new one, which is actually part of council goals as well, is collaborate with Sisters Business Association to understand the needs of all the businesses and how those, both traded sector and our retail and other businesses all really work together and overlap. So he's doing quite a bit more work with that. The budget for this, and Joe might have to jump in with a little bit of explanation, but basically the county does fund about $40,000 and change for this program, and the city funds the rest. We are a gold member with EDCO, which is $10,000 a year, which allows us to have a voting board member on the EDCO Central Oregon Board. And then the only line item that Gary might look at is for the forgivable loan program, which we have not had in a number of years. I'm going to preempt that. I don't know if that can get taken out or not.
Beat me to it.
But I just noticed
I
that.
can go home now.
All is good. Any questions for myself or for Jordan or Joe on economic development?
I'm the council advisory person on both those boards, the local board and the regional board as well, and so I can answer questions if you have any, or if you need further explanation, some of it.
Are we finding that having one full-time EDCO consultant contractor is enough for our city at this time? Is there potential?
I think so.
Yes.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find even more than one full-time job, although it's a full-time job.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't think they do that for any city.
No, I think including Ben, there's one full-time EDCO person for each city.
Good for us then.
Yeah.
Definitely. We technically a sisters area, but I don't think there's a lot of business outside of the city limits of the city of Sisters. But the county still contributes, $40,000 for it.
Yeah, I just like to throw my support in for the 3% extra bump. And it's not just Sisters Country Economic Development and Eric Strobel as the representative, but it's EDCO in general has kind of morphed into a more collaborative body with non-traded sector businesses due to the legislative needs, lobbying that we have to do, and they've partnered with the regional board has partnered with the Chamber of Commerce of Bend to get some of that accomplished. I think we've learned over the years, especially since COVID, that there's not much difference between traded sector businesses and regular businesses and the needs that they have for their workers, which is housing and childcare and all of that stuff. So the whole organization is changing due to needs in those areas. And unfortunately, that also creates a little more cost because they're spreading their message, and collaboration is just getting more. It's just more, unfortunately.
Personally, though, I think it's money well spent in terms of bringing employment into our community and helping fill holes when some of our bigger employees get absorbed by someone else, and then, we're going to stick around for a while, and then they're gone the next day. It's having someone like Eric on board who can go out and network and sell us as a place that has space available for quality businesses has paid off. Is there more to be done? Sure. But if we didn't have them, there would be an awful lot of real estate sitting vacant in this town, as some businesses have decided to move production overseas or to another state.
I mean, he's definitely the point person when a business is coming, considering our town. They don't always want to talk to the city and show all their cards to local jurisdiction. So that's why EDCO exists. So they have a place to go. Eric knows more about the space available out in the business park than anybody. So he's worth he's worth the money, I think. No problem.
All right, great. Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, that's it for the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of flipping by some pages that are summary of what we just did. And are we coming into the street fund?
Yeah, so yeah, the following pages are capital expenditure summaries, and then page 61 through 64 are just kind of a snapshot of the general fund in total. So that's kind of what we're used to seeing before we kind of reformatted a lot of these department summaries. So if you want to see kind of the holistic view of the general fund, that's provided to you there. But with the street fund, we're on page 65.
Hello again. Biggest accomplishment from last year, probably Locust Roundabout. Finishing up with landscaping on that. You should see in its finished form by the end of June. Completed phase 1, Sisters Gateway Transportation Hub. We went out to bid for a big project. That's the Elm Street multi-use path. We're hoping to construct that next year. And Jordan mentioned it earlier, wrapping up design for the North Locust corridor improvements and accomplished our annual chip seal, crack seal, basic road maintenance projects. Projects for next year largely focused on pedestrian safety. So Elm Street multi-use path is a great example of that, getting pedestrians off of the roadway, getting a pedestrian bridge so they don't have to go through that bottleneck area. There is our continuing support with ODOT for the EV chargers at the transportation hub. It's a 10.27% match. I think it comes out to about $26,000. North Locust corridor safety improvements. Jordan mentioned the small city allotment grant. It's $250,000 for that, so a very large chunk of that project is grant funded. And also, as mentioned previously, replacing the bark dust in our downtown core with gravel. So as our staff go through and do their annual beginning of season maintenance of trimming out dead foliage, we're trimming those brushes down so that people can see around the corner. We'll go in behind that and be replacing that bark mulch with gravel, just for fire resiliency.
Did I hear that downtown but not Cascade? Is that what?
Cascade doesn't have any bark mulch. It's more of a curb-to-curb growth. So that's going to be something we'll have to look at kind of on its own.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Would that maybe be in conjunction with signage and with potentially lighting upgrades and the safety improvements all kind of done in the same bucket? And I'm just kind of curious. I mean, if you think about the curb-to-curb growth, and some of that will be disturbed or removed as we look at some of our wayfinding signage and potentially some type of lighting upgrades or whatever for the dark sky compliance, that would make more sense to look at doing some of those things at that time rather than doing it now and then having to go in and disturb it as we make those other changes and improvements to Cascade Corridor.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. It's actually a good point that, the lighting hopefully is not too invasive. We're switching out those decorative Cascade lights. But the road safety, the Cascade safety audit, there will be some quick fixes, right? We're talking about signage and striping and things like that. There may be some bigger ticket items like reconfiguring parking, and maybe doing more curb extensions and things like that. And that might be the opportunity to look at landscape management. So not a bad idea to kind of think about it holistically.
One quick thing that kind of seems introductory here because of talking about the landscaping. So on Cascade Avenue, we have the crossings, and they have tall grass from soon until August, September. It's I'm a very cautious driver, and more than once, people that are wearing dark green or khaki, or you're facing the sun, or they have small animals that blend in. It's easy to not see people when they're standing behind that grass at the, I guess you're calling it curb to curb foliage. So it's something that you guys should be keeping in mind as a council and reviewing the safety standards, because it's something that seems so obvious and appalling to me that when it gets tall, it's hard to see people. And so in talking about hardening for fire, keeping that grass down or replacing it with something that's lower or non-existent and all completely just get rid of it would help, in addition to whatever other striping is being considered.
Quick question on the Elm Street project. For that construction, is that this fiscal year or calendar year? When is that construction actually supposed to
That'll be in the 26-27 fiscal year, probably this calendar year as well, because we are out to bid for that at the moment.
So what's the target for
completion?
End of the calendar year.
Jackson, since we're talking about that, where does the path start?
It would start, let me order it myself. That would be the southeast corner of the intersection of Jefferson and Elm Street.
Oh.
So just across the street from Village Green, connecting into that pedestrian crossing, down the east side of Elm Street, crossing Wyches Creek. The pedestrian bridge would be separated from the vehicular bridge, and terminating at that northeast corner of South Elm Street and Tyee.
Oh, great. I didn't realize it was going that far north. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So that provides access to the PRT through the old parking and entrance site before the parking lot was built.
Correct.
All right. Anything else on street fund?
I have a question about what is the Central Oregon Storm Manual?
It's the Central Oregon Stormwater Manual, so all, excuse me, all cities partake in that, and the manual just addresses how we handle stormwater in the region, so protecting waterways, proper disposal of that. And
How often is that done? Is it? It's not annually.
it is not annually, no.
And I have a question on towing services. Is that for people who abandon a car on a city street?
Correct. Or if we've put out notices ahead of road work.
Yeah, okay. I figured it had something to do with that too, yeah.
I'd like to also point out for the Gateway Transportation Hub EV chargers, the 10% match, that would cost $260,000 if we didn't get that grant instead of $26,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
So thank you for getting those grants. I'd be really interested to know how many grants we got last year, but I know that's not something that you guys compute generally, and it's not a budget item, but it would be kind of nice for you guys to toot your own horn and let us know how many grants you get every year.
Free money keeps us down.
I mean, so thank you for doing it, of course, but we know it's millions and millions of dollars, so thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the street SDC fund. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, stranger.
Come on down.
I think I recognize this guy, but I'm not sure.
So my name is Paul Brutagna. I've worked for the city for a long time and transitioned from the Public Works Director, who was responsible for not only the operations but the capital project end of Public Works for, again, quite a while. We split off the capital projects that I'm now overseeing in all of our utility funds, as well as all of our SDC funds, depending on what year and what projects are going to be coming up. But these are your big projects. You're, anywhere from 200 to, $6 million dollars per project. So, our last really big project was Cascade Avenue. That was with ODOT. That was a $6-7 million project. We're going to be bringing home about $6 million worth of projects this next year. So on top of what we have done in fiscal year 25-26. So you either pay an engineering firm a lot of money or multiple engineering firms to do this type of project management, or we keep it in-house. And what's nice about keeping it in-house is I get to take these projects all the way from project concept to project development to design to construction to implementation, and work with our folks in our operations department to make sure that they're getting what they need to do the job. So exciting kind of new career for me, which is, you do it long enough and you need the next step. So appreciate the opportunity for that. So with that, Jackson and I will be kind of teaming up on the different operating fund projects. The Elm Street multi-use path, I'll be overseeing that. The larger projects, the North Locust corridor improvements, and he'll be managing more of the day-to-day projects. So street SCCs today, the big accomplishment in really our street system last year was, like Jackson said, Locust Roundabout, but also the Barclay improvements, kind of transitioning our through traffic from having to use the downtown corridor to be able to use that alternate route. And as we move through the alternate route over the next couple of years with different improvements, we will have a full corridor that hopefully we can put on freight traffic to that road and try to keep those guys out of our downtown because they don't want to be down there either. So with that, it costs money. And one of the ways we fund our projects is with SDCs. So we knew that we have some bigger projects coming and we needed to update. We also needed to take off projects that have already been funded and built. So we did that work with a consultant and staff, and we're just wrapping that up. We'll take it to council in June for their review, and then hopefully implement it either right away next year or through a different type of implementation plan, maybe a phase plan. So that's a big part of being able to build these projects, and something that we want to get out in front of with the UGB coming, to be able to make sure our fees are where they need to be so that growth actually pays for growth and not our existing tax payers paying for growth. So with that, the second phase of Barclay, phase two, of the Barclay improvements, we have that completely designed. We got the cost estimate. Total for that full project was about $3 million. Phase two is like 2.1. So we're really just trying to figure out how we can pay that. Maybe there's potential for some grant funding. We don't want to completely drain the street fund or the street SDC fund to be able to do that. So we're going to have to be creative in how we fund that project. So,
Paul, can you just summarize what's included in phase two?
So phase two is taking off from where we ended at Larch Street and building that 3-lane cross section with 10-foot multi-use paths or sidewalks on both sides of the road and taking that all the way to Pine Street. So that includes new storm drainage, street lighting, ADA crossings at the different street intersections, as well as widening that pavement to a 3-lane cross section. So we have a turn lane all the way on Barclay from Locust to the Barclay roundabout.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Paul, that would improve that sightline problem that we have currently at Pine Street in Barclay.
It will help. Yeah, we'll be softening those curves a little bit. right there. But, you know, the biggest thing with the sightline at Barclay and Pine is a private fence.
Yeah, but
that I can't fix. So, yeah.
So, Paul, paint us a picture maybe of what, just because it came up before, and I know it's a priority of what it would take to get to the 2.1 million for Barclay, and just a guideline of what we would want to leave in the street fund. Like, so what are we missing there?
So I think we're gonna come up with a strategy of multiple funding options. We have the street fund, we have the street SDC fund. We also need to see when or how this new transportation SDC is going to get implemented. That's a big part of it. And then we'll have a better idea on exactly, you know, how much we can use from each fund and obviously leave for future expenditures.
I appreciate that.
Oh, just one thing about system development charges, right? It's where do they come from? New development, right? And so you notice in our revenues for the street SDC fund, you'll see this in all the different funds is, you know, we include an amount of anticipated revenue from SDCs. How do we get there? Pre-apps is a big part of it, right? Especially if it's a commercial development. Those usually generate a lot in transportation SDCs, but it's never a guarantee, right? Like we've talked about, we have pre-apps and it might not materialize. You never see that permit come in, you never see that hearing happen. And so it's something you can't bank on. You don't want to plan a project. I mean, you can always terminate and pause or something if it doesn't materialize, but you don't want to fund and move forward with the project until you actually have the bird in the hand or whatever the saying is, right? And then that 500,000 is also a reflection of something that the council is going to be talking about next month, and that's the increase in the actual methodology or the SDC rate.
Yeah, so I more than appreciate the conservative approach, because I don't think anyone here wants to get caught with not enough for something that comes up. But I also appreciate understanding, what might the path be from here to there. So thank you. Thanks for that.
I think just for the group, so our current transportation SDC per peak PM trip is right around $2,600, and we're looking to take that to about $7,000 per trip, so roughly 300%. But these street projects are getting more and more expensive. That's the reality, and like I told our Public Works Advisory Board, this won't be the last time we do this. When we have a UGB, there's a whole nother network of roads that have to get built over there, and it's tens of millions of dollars. And so we will be back at the well, essentially, looking at our STC rates.
And nothing slows down SDC income as a bad economy and no construction, right? I mean, that's where we get it from.
We've seen that before. Yep.
Okay. Anything else on the street SDC fund? All right, we're gonna turn the corner to the park SDC fund, and that is 72, page 72. Is this a new person? Do you have to leave your seat to
I'll
come
take
back?
this. Yeah, I thought we were dipping into water there, but okay. So we completed the Northwest Park Master Plan with really robust community outreach process, and came up with the master plan that now we got to figure out how to pay for. So again, this next year is going to be coming up with a creative solution, including grants. There's one specifically, it's an Oregon Park and Rec grant that is this is a good candidate for. And the success of getting that grant will kind of determine the schedule for that phase one of this park planning. So Other than that, we're just continuing to save dollars for future improvements.
Paul, what's the current match on the state park grant?
I think it's 80-20, I believe.
Okay, thanks.
We have better success if we can go in at like a 50-50. We've learned that in the past.
Yeah.
But I think minimums are 80-20.
Thanks.
I think the minimum might actually drop with the legislation last year, but I could check on that for small cities.
Just curious. I knew it was, they were considering it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the park SDC fund? Any thoughts on how the next hour should go on eating, break, continuing?
I think food's coming in behind you.
Yeah, so it's here. So we came back in at 10:30, so we've been here an hour and a half. So that kind of feels like it might be a nice time for a break. Thoughts on take a 20-minute break, bring back food, or take a 45-minute break, chat? Anyone?
We have 1 hour left.
Theoretically. I mean,
Working lunch.
yeah. All right, great.
Short break?
Yep,
take a
great.
20-minute break.
20 minutes. Let's enough time to circulate food, go to the bathroom, refill your drinks.
And
Okay,
we'll have enough time to finish the rest.
should be.
I think so.
40 minutes for the rest. Okay.
All right, ready, go.
Did you see I forwarded you that grant opportunity in real time? If you just fix it right now, like.
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
Because even if I have a conversation and I don't get a job,
All right, I'm going to go ahead and give the warning that we're going to start. So if everyone could take their places.
There might be something else we could.
I think we're at.
For though, since we got a lot of.
Okay, we'll be at. I think. We'll wait till Paul's back. How's that? Oh, yes. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, we're on the Parking District Fund, page 74.
Okay, so this is a fund that is gets its revenue from the parking district, which is downtown, mostly the downtown core. And I think it's a business tax off their business license. It's so much, like 5 cents per square foot or something. It doesn't get a lot of revenue, as you can see, per year. So what we've done since this was implemented back in the late 90s is save for 10, 12, 15 years and then do a project. So we did that, accumulated the $360,000, and that is helping fund parking improvements for the Adams project. And we're looking, it helped fund specifically the side streets where we're getting diagonal parking from mid-block between Main and Adams to Adams, all the way from oak, ash, elm, fir, spruce, and cedar, and larch. So with that, we're back into saving mode for the next round of projects to create parking in the downtown.
Everybody still awake after lunch? Got that food going on? Any questions for Paul? Comments? Great, thank you. Let's see what's next.
All right, thank you. I'm on page 76. This is the City Hall Debt Service Fund. I see some dashes in there. Gary. So this fund is basically the City Hall's contribution for its debt service, which is pretty straightforward. And the way that happens is other funds, general fund, water, street, and sewer all pay into the City Hall debt service fund, and then the debt is paid out of the City Hall debt service fund. So as you can see here, it keeps a relatively low fund balance. And then actually, in 2 years, this loan will be paid off. And so, yeah, which is pretty remarkable. And prior to, the URA debt service, the city's debt service payment is about $400,000, and it's going to go down to about $260 for a little bit until some of these other capital projects commence. But pretty neat to see just the timing of all this, all these projects kind of come to fruition. So, yeah, pretty straightforward fund, and we probably won't see much of it for in a few years.
Anyone have anything? Anyone? Okay. All right. Next up is the water fund on page 78.
Switcheroo.
So our water fund, its primary purpose is operating and maintaining our existing water infrastructure. Is a self-supporting fund largely from water receipts to customers. Through this fund, we were able to complete well one construction specifications so that we can get ready to go out to bid for that project. Began construction of the well 3 generator improvements. So that is the only of our wells that does not have a backup generator. And then future projects under this, again, constructing those well 1 improvements, completing those improvements to well 3. Along with well 1, we would be implementing our wildfire mitigation plan recommendations on that section of land. And again, continuing to implement our conservation plan for water saving projects. So that's our City Hall landscaping, Firewise, Waterwise project. Looking at the Hood Avenue islands, retrofitting those. And of course, replacing infrastructure that's reaching its end of life.
But for the benefit of the group, well 1 is located.
That is just south of town where Elm Street turns into Three Creeks Road.
And that's what I thought. And then well 3 is?
That is the one near the airport on Sun Ranch. Yes, just off
Adjacent
campus.
to Pollinator Park.
Yes, Jason.
Like they used to call it that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the lifespan for the wells?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
You mean the water or the equipment?
So we typically are able to get 20 years to try to get out of a motor and a pump. Our water is very clean. We don't have a lot of grit, which reduces the life span. But yeah, we shoot for right in that 20-year.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to note a couple additional items from Jackson's presentation. Again, looking at, let's go down to the detail, I guess, on page, let's go to page 80. Actually, let's go to 81. So, as Jordan mentioned, in terms of the capital projects, and as I mentioned with the debt service, so, you have a lot of these significant projects in the water utility, water, SCC, and water. Well, the water SCC fund balances cannot do all those projects on their own. And so the water fund is going to help pay for those capital projects. And we contemplated that back in 2023, if you remember, and we did, like I said before, with some adjustments of utility rates. And so tracking those rates to make sure our fund balance is suitable enough to provide for that debt service. And so you see the debt service in here for this with the left side of many dashes for $465,000, and that's kind of an estimate based on an $8 million borrowing. And as we get into the sewer SCC fund, you'll see that $8 million come into that fund to provide for a lot of those capital, those kind of near-term capital projects. And that is, again, that's kind of an estimate that we were given at that time. Now, if that borrowing is maybe turned out to be $7 million, is a little less because of our favorable fund balances and water STC and the water fund, then that debt service will be a little bit less. But this is kind of what we were given as a projection in that model. And so that's kind of the dynamic of how that will work with the water and the water SDC funds together. So that's just wanted to make sure that was addressed, just because of the uniqueness to this year for that.
Just probably a question for either one of you two, and that is, I remember a ways back we got rid of the chlorine gases in the well houses and went to a different way for salt-based, I think, or whatever system. Is that why when I look at line 722 chlorinary repairs, that's because we no longer have them?
We still have the one at well 1.
Okay.
That will be replacing with the new system.
Excellent.
Next year. That's
so much safer for everybody.
Absolutely.
All right. Looks like we're ready to move along to the water SDC fund.
I have a go back question.
Oh, yeah.
Which you can also answer. When we're doing the VFD replacements, are those usually more efficient? Are we going to see a difference like in the electric costs, or it'll be negligible?
Absolutely. So right now, our older pumps, you turn it on, it's running full bore no matter how many people are using water. The VFD will actually sense and can be adjusted to meet the speed of the pump to meet the demand of the system at the time.
So well 3 isn't that old in terms of the structure anyway.
Yeah, but they didn't put a VFD. Yeah. Yeah, I was too.
That's to kind of take care of that problem.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, water STCs. This is a big year for this fund. You can see by the transfer in of the loan proceeds of $8 million. Last year, we were doing a lot of prep work for construction this year. We had to do a full environmental analysis with the Forest Service on the Edgerton transmission main and our reservoir projects. We got that completed in under a year, which is remarkable. We procured the design team, completed the design of the Edgerton line, and it's actually out to bid right now. And then procured part of the design team. That's not what we found out is we actually have to do an RFP for the engineering of it. We did the original, the geotech work already, and now we're going to have to go out just because of the cost of the design work. Put us above that task order threshold. So our legal team came back and said, no, you have to do a full public process. So we'll be starting that within the next couple weeks and have that design team on board, hopefully by mid-July or so. And that will start the one of the goals this next year of designing that new 2.2 million gallon reservoir. The Edgerton transmission main, so for the benefit of the group, we have one water line connecting town to our reservoir site. It was put in the 60s. It's aging pipe, it's undersized, and again, it's only one line. So if we have a failure in it, we lose the ability to have our reservoirs supplement water supply to town. So the new Edgerton line will be a new 16-inch line going a different path up to the reservoir, so it'll give us redundancy, it'll give us a brand new line, increase flows to town, increase fire flows, and then it'll allow us to replace that existing old 1960s line without taking the reservoirs off site. So it's critical infrastructure. Big project. We're looking, $3.5 million, basically 3 miles of pipe. And we'll see what the bids come in a couple weeks. So we're excited for that.
Question, Paul. The existing line is like 8-inch, 10-inch?
12-inch.
And so SDCs can only cover the upsize of that line?
Correct.
The remainder is general fund because
Operating fund.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. So the SDCs can only cover the added capacity of the line, which would be to service new facilities. What already existed, they won't cover.
Correct. But the Edgerton line is brand new, and it's all for growth, so it covers 100% through the SCCs.
Thank you.
What's the material for the pipe itself?
So the Edgerton line will be PVC. Yep. C900, really thick, robust, bulletproof. I shouldn't say bulletproof, but bullet resistant probably.
Call
pipe.
before you dig.
Yeah. Yep. The replacement line that we will do, which actually runs under the creek and more through the Forest Service forest, we'll actually do ductile iron because of the fire potential of heat. Heat and PVC don't like each other. But the Edgerton line, we're going up a road, so there's really no concern there.
So the PVC is the most cost effective?
It's half the price of ductile iron. Yeah. The other big project we have this year is the Edge of the Pines mainline replacement project. Edge of the Pines is this neighborhood right across the street. It extends from Black Butte to East Cascade, from Locust to Tamarack. And we've seen a ton of growth in there over the last 10, 15 years. It was originally very big lots, and now they're 2, 3, 4 lots. Exactly what we're seeing right across the street today, getting built. Duplexes, triplexes. There's old 4-inch 1960s era water lines in there that were. The practice back then was to bury the direct bury power line right next to the water line. So when our crew goes in, it's really scary to be digging around and fixing those pipes when you have a live electrical line laying right next to it, not in a separate conduit. So we'll be putting in upsizing from 4-inch to 8-inch, which will also increase fire flows in that area, will increase the number of hydrants. The circulation will be better increased. But just for our staff, we will be getting separation from that direct bury conduit.
A new trench.
Yep. And then we've already started. We'll be doing the bulk of it with the Forest Service again. We need to do basically a NEPA review off of an existing Forest Service permit for that, what we're calling the White Shoes transmission main for that project to replace that old 12-inch. That'll be, again, a year-long process, so we'll be doing that over the next year.
So Edge of the Pines, are you going to just run down the roads, down the middle? Because there are lanes in there. Are you going to go?
We will be in the lanes. So there's 20-foot lanes.
Oh, I know.
Yep. And so the water line that's in there will be basically 5 feet off of, and we'll be in those lanes. Yep. Because that's where all the service lines are originating from. If we were to switch out to Tamarack and Maple, we'd have to replumb every house through there to come out the different side.
Even now you've got crisscrossing.
It'll be a fun one. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Little bit of spaghetti plumbing in there. Yep. That's all I have.
Anyone else? All right. Thanks, Paul. Let's see what's up next. We've got the sewer fund.
This fund, much like our water fund, is for ongoing operations and maintenance, and again, is self-supporting through sewer receipts. big accomplishment this year is getting Westside Pump Station constructed and online. Still have yet to go online. There's a few finishing touches being made, but once that facility is up and running, that will allow us to then move on to the improvements needed at Rope Pump Station. Westside Pump Station will take half the flows of town, so kind of relieving a little bit of pressure on Rope while they do that work will be ideal. Other projects we're looking forward to is design of the Lazy Z Phase 1 improvements, and of course, ongoing biosolids removal from our wastewater ponds.
That one sounds fun.
Yeah. Last.
Yikes. Anyone? Questions?
I just had a question about we have the additional dump station now. So I see that it's relatively flat what we're projecting. Are we thinking we're just spreading out what would have just all been at Creekside?
Yeah, I think towards the end of last year, they were almost split 50-50. And we're not sure in terms of conservative budget and revenue projections that it's going to be more. It probably will be, but it's hard to say. Yeah.
My guess is it will be more as people traveling through find it, especially folks that would go in and drive by and look at the line at the campground and, I'll wait and I'll do it in Redmond or somewhere else. So.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to get a little bit of a guesstimate based on some of the winter activity, and there wasn't very much. And so I think just, as the word gets out and campos kind of direct other people towards that dump station, it will get more activity, but it's really hard to say, I think, at this point.
Just today, we had a call from somebody who was not staying at our campground, but in town with an RV and noticed that site and wanted verification that it was indeed a dump station. So it is getting that attention.
Well, and I chatted with one of the new hosts the other day, and he said, where is that located anyway? So I kind of gave him directions to where it was so they could tell people when they showed up. Perfect, thank you.
Lazy Z Orchard grass cutting and baling, is that then being sold?
We do. We auction that off.
Okay, so does that show up in revenue then?
Yes, it does. I think it's in miscellaneous for revenue, yeah.
Miscellaneous?
Yep.
So we're going to do that again this year. How long have we been doing that?
4 or 5 years.
4, yeah.
Okay. It's turning out to work pretty well then, huh?
We're going to be selling it off by the cutting this time around, see if we can get better prices with fresher hay.
You guys wear a lot of hats. I appreciate that.
We're in the hay business.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
No.
No.
No, but it's another detail to manage, right? So I mean, it's just a.
Will the biosolid removal be used in the same way over the hayfield like it was before? Yep, thank you. That's what I thought, but I was just kind of curious if we could still do that. Yep, fertilizer.
Fertilizer.
Sister's finest fertilizer.
Yeah. Convenient. It's really convenient.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, we should get a cut.
Wow. Okay. This afternoon, we're still going to stay with sewer, but we're going to the SDC fund. So more good times.
Yeah, like Jackson was saying, we are getting ready to put our new West Side Pump Station online. Remember that was a $2.8 million project. We're going to come in under budget on that and excited to get that in place kind of for that next, just setting the stage for the UGB expansion, because all of the UGB expansion area will drain to the Rope Street Pump Station. Taking away half of that flow going in there provides that capacity to be able to not have to build another pump station or another pressure main going up to the treatment plant. So you try to do good planning, and every once in a while it works. Getting Lazy Z ready to design and construct is It's a long process with our regulatory agencies. We had to renew our wastewater permit with DEQ. That actually went out of public comment yesterday, and so we didn't hear anything, haven't heard anything from DEQ on that. So we should have our new wastewater permit here in the next month or so, and then that will trigger updating our reclaimed water use plan. And all of this goes back to updating our master plans in 2023. And once we have the reclaimed water use plan updated, that triggers a groundwater protection plan. Since we are going to be changing the way we use our effluent with the wetlands out there, we want to make sure we're not impacting, even though the wetlands will be lined, we want to make positively sure we're not impacting the groundwater at all. So we'll have monitoring wells around that site, and then a full plan administered by DEQ on just the annual monitoring of those wells. So all of that is going to take a good part of this next year, and before we start the actual design of the wetlands. So we're probably looking at spring next year to really start the design once we get the regulatory thumbs up from DEQ. So any questions on that? I know it's a slow process. I want to be under construction this year, but we're at the kind of the mercy of those agencies doing their review and noticing and writing of the permits.
One hot topic with water in the Deschutes Basin has been artificial recharge. And I mean, I know that there's the different class levels of waste and what can go into the groundwater and not. I mean, is that, say, bubbled up? But
Bubbles down.
Yeah, bubbled down. In conversations, because it seems, you know, and talking with Coco and the other cities in Central Oregon, I mean, this is suddenly the topic. And so I know Jordan and I know you brought it up, I think, one of the meetings of like, well, wait, we're, you know, how would, you know, could our plan help with this, or, you know, is it not viable?
Can you guys explain what artificial recharge is?
Yeah, it's, oh, well, geez. It's like trying to explain Bitcoin. It is, there's been 100 years of canals taking water out of Deschutes, through Deschutes County up into Jefferson County, and those canals leaked. And meanwhile, growth of communities and houses and stuff around there, so they're sticking wells in the ground, and so they were getting that leaked water. So now they're piping most of those canals, right, to keep the water in the Deschutes, which is great. But now a lot of those wells are going dry, and it's climate change, and it's, you know, other things are impacting it too, snowpack and stuff. It's not just that, but so there's a lot of talk about artificial recharge, of just finding places to stick water back in the ground, but geology, and it kind of depends where and when, you know. So I mean, I know water-wise we're in a good spot here overall, which is nice.
I think our biggest challenge in terms of wastewater and artificial recharge is the artificial recharge they're talking about now is the safer, you know, like winter redirection of irrigation, you know, typically, you know, surface water that then you can inject into the groundwater for when you need it in the summer, right? Our wastewater is not Class A, right? It doesn't have that type of treatment to clean it to a level that I think regulators would feel comfortable with us letting that filtrate down into substrate and then eventually into the aquifer. So we'd probably have to do more investments in actual treatment of the wastewater to facilitate capturing some of that water. Other parts of the country do it, and other parts of the world, obviously, but it's a more technical investment that has to go into that.
Eventually, we will be doing it. Absolutely. If the climate modeling is going to play out like they're telling us, we'll be using our treated wastewater much more beneficially than we do today.
Yeah, it works. Make beer out of it.
Yeah. But using land application, you know, we do get some recharge off of that, you know, with, but we're just not putting a lot of it out there, you know, to make that. Most of it's evaporated.
Yeah. I wasn't say it was for or against it. It's just been the topic, so I was
It's a reality, yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think also the amounts we're talking too are pretty small compared to the loss that's happening with, the piping projects.
For the benefit of others, COCO is
Central Oregon Cities Organization. Sorry about that.
not something that's brown that you drink.
Yeah, well, I guess I could bring cocoa to cocoa, but
All right. So I think that wraps our this portion of the conversation. And so I'm going to move over back to the guidelines and motions page if anyone's following along. So it seems that it's time for a budget hearing, which means that we're going to, well, we approve this coming out of committee, right? And then it comes again to council. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this next piece is the budget committee approving the budget, and then there is another step that will come at a later council meeting.
So just real quick with the motion, I noticed two of the numbers are transposed, so it should be in number 7A on the agenda is 2.6417, not 2.6147.
Yeah, we don't want to have to reconvene, right? Just
No, yeah.
What other mistakes are in this budget after?
Did you say there was more? Just the one?
Just that one, yeah, just that one. No, the budget overall total is correct. Oh, of what that is? Sure. Yeah, so with the public hearing for the state revenue sharing, that gives the public the opportunity to comment on the spending of state shared revenues. So they do that in this meeting, and they'll have the opportunity to do that again when the budget gets adopted by City Council on the 10th. Oh, so yeah, for those who don't know, state revenue sharing is it's liquor tax, it's cigarette tax, it's highway tax, and basically the state collects all those and then distributes it per capita, and so it's just another measure of the public's input, I guess, on the treatment of those funds. It's not all per capita, but it's mostly per capita.
Chair, I would just note under motion 7C to correct that to say move to cancel the Thursday, May 21st meeting.
I won't cancel what we've already done, huh?
That's two mistakes. Doing here.
We're still canceling the meeting, yeah?
Well,
That's fine. Oh, on my, sorry, I'm just looking at the agenda.
okay, so I am going to open a public hearing for state revenue sharing. I think, so you've just done the staff report.
Yeah.
actually.
There usually isn't a lot of input here. Have you ever heard of any, Jordan?
Okay, so I guess we'll ask if there's any public comment.
There's no in-person or online public comment.
Great, thank you. And that's it, right? So I can close the hearing? Okay, that hearing's closed. You gotta do what you gotta do. All right, I would love to consider motions or have any discussion amongst ourselves.
Great job by city staff. I mean, the only reason the budget meetings are getting shorter and shorter is because the presentation gets better and better. It's not anything to do with us on this side, so thank you.
I'll get rid of those dash lines.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know,
Dashes.
at least 30 seconds.
The published one will be nice and clean. Oh, wow, yeah. Yep.
Well, I move the Budget Committee of the City of Sisters approve taxes for the 2026-27 fiscal year at the rate of $2.6417 per 1,000 of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy.
My second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays or abstains? Okay, that passes.
Madam Chair, I move to cancel the Thursday, May 21st, 2026 Budget Committee meeting. Oh, I
Back up.
one. Sorry, we had C, B, yeah. I just wanted to get out of there.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I move the Budget Committee of the City of Sisters to approve the budget for the fiscal year 2026-2027 in the amount of $43,858,935.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays or abstentions? No. Great.
Madam Chair, I again move Thursday, May 21st, 2026 Budget meeting.
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Anyone want to come back? Okay, great. That passes. All right, and so I'm going to recess this meeting until next year. Okay, so next up is the URA meeting. Do we need to wait until 1 o'clock to start that? Is that was published that way? Yes, I'm getting nods, so if anybody has a 5-minute drink, refill, quick run, eat the rest of their lunch time.
Shotgun and Keystone.
Okay, we'll